Hello, welcome to the live stream for February 7th, 2018. I am your host, Dana Morningstar, and this is a live stream we do every single Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So welcome. And let me make sure I've got everything all set up here. I think we're good. So Tanitria, Leslie, new Chris, Shella. New Chris says, who disturbs my slumber? It is me. Don't you just love getting those YouTube notifications, especially in the middle of the night? Good times. Dandelion, Tara. Welcome, welcome. I forgot to make tea. I knew I was forgetting to do something. And so I'm making tea right now before we get going. Let's see, Donna, Ingrid, Lauren, D-Mel, James. James says, hey everyone, Dana, I have a question. Well, go for it and I will scroll and see if I can find it. But before we get going, there are a few things I wanted to get into real quick. I just wanted to say, first and foremost, thank you guys so much for the reviews on my books and on my podcast. I really appreciate it. Please keep them coming. It really does help, especially with the with both really, but with the podcast that helps other people, I think, get the podcast found. So that's a big help. And then with books, of course, it's always, reviews are always helpful. And speaking of reviews, okay, here's a dilemma I have. So it's so funny how every single platform is different. Like here on YouTube, I know for me, I think most people, right? I know for me too. One of the things I love about YouTube is the comment section. That's like the first thing I do when I go on YouTube and I see a video I like. I scroll down to the comments and I see what are people talking about? What's going on? I love the comments on YouTube. And same with Facebook and same with Instagram. But it's weird because Amazon is like its own thing. And there's kind of this unspoken rule, I guess, that authors are not supposed to comment on comments in there. And I totally get it. And it's so weird, right? Because it's all kind of like you're just being creative in different ways, right? But anyways, so I'm in this writers group and and it's funny because people post in there all the time. They'll post like their 1-star reviews or, just their critical reviews. And it's a good support system for people. And people ask tons of questions. It's just fantastic to be able to connect with other people that are kind of doing the same thing. Anyways, so I get this review. It was a 5-star review. And the gal said something along the lines of, it was a good book, but just heads up, it's extremely short. Just something along the lines of, just wanted you to know. But she put this comment on Amazon. Now here's the dilemma that I have is my book is not extremely short. It's like 368 pages. And although I would love to think that my writing is just riveting and that she just couldn't get enough of it, I doubt that's the case. And I'm kind of wondering if she got a book that was printed weird, or if she got an ebook that wasn't the full copy, or something happened. Because it's not, like I said, it's not by any stretch a short book. It's probably one of the longer books in this genre. So, but what do I do? do I make a comment to her comment and risk kind of freaking her out? Or do I just let it go and think maybe I guess if she's comparing my books to, stuff like Stephen King or, people like that, or like encyclopedias, or, you know what I mean? Like really long books, then it would be short. But I don't know. I don't know what to do. It's weird. I don't even mind. I don't even mind if it was if it's a sincere review, like, hey, you know, everybody's got their own taste, right? So it's I am totally expecting people to not like my stuff. Like, that's just going to happen, right? And although, and I don't get salty about bad reviews or thumbs down or anything like that. It's especially if they come with solid, sincere criticism. Like, even if it's not really constructive, but if it's legit, like they really mean, they really mean what they're saying, then, you know, I try to squeeze as much out of that as I possibly can. And I'm a new writer. So, you know, people are going to have, I don't know, it's a learning curve, right? Like, nobody starts out at the finish line. So it's just weird. Yeah, Tara asked, could you contact the reviewer directly? No, I can't, because I don't have their info. Like, all I can do is, and actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm not even sure if I can write a review to their review. Like, that used to be a thing that Amazon, that you could do, but maybe all I can click is helpful or unhelpful. I don't know. I'd have to go back and check. So it was strange. And then, let's see, what else was I going? Okay, so there was that. So those were the two things about my book. And then, here's another weird thing. So Amazon, I don't know how or why, there seems to be no rhyme or reason for it. People in my writers group were like, just go with it. But they have my book, the Out of the Fog book, on sale. This is not something that I did. This is something that Amazon did. So I don't know how that's all going to shake out, but right now it's like $5 off. So if you're interested in buying the paperback version of that book, now would be the time. So just something to share with you. And I believe I said I was going to open my next book with you guys. So I think this is it. I'm not sure what all I ordered. I ordered a lot of stuff from Amazon. It's all impulse randomness. Like, I ordered a can opener. You know what I ordered today off of Amazon? I ordered a can opener, and I ordered magnetic camera covers for my laptop and my iPhone. Totally random. Okay, so I'm going to open this, and then I will hop into the chat and get into some questions. Is this my book? Oh, it is. I want to make sure that it looks like how it's supposed to. Oh gosh, it makes me so nervous looking at the cover, because I just don't want to see a typo or anything else. That looks really good. I'm not going to look at it too hard, because that's stressed me out. Okay, yes. So this is the first book. This I'm very pleased with this. They did a good job. So this is the first book, Start Here. And it's so fun to actually see it come and, to hold on to it and actually see what it looks like in person. I remember spending all of this time designing the cover on Canva, because I do not know any design programs, and like doing a mock-up and giving it to a designer and being like, this is like kind of what I'm going for. What can you do with this? So this book differs from the other book, or I should say the ebook version, in that this one has a glossary. So it has all of the terms, all of the terms and definitions in there in the glossary. So I have all kinds of stuff listed out, like abuse by proxy, altruistic narcissist, anticipation, antisocial personality disorder, apology, BDSM, baiting, borderline personality disorder, boundaries, boundary pushes, brainwashing, branding, cerebral narcissist, codependency, cognitive dissonance, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, covert abuse. It just goes on and on and on. So tons and tons of terms and concepts in this book, and then frequently asked questions and lots of stuff. So that's cool. That's going to go on my bookshelf. I like it. Good deal. So Free to Be Me says, I got Start Here in the mail today. This book is amazing. I think it should be read in all high schools. Terms, definitions. It is such an easy read. I love it. Thank you so much. I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Man, I tell you, one of the concepts in there, actually there's a few, but one that really sticks out in my mind is the concept of cognitive dissonance. I went over that and over that and over that and over that, trying to just comb through it to make it as understandable as possible, because it's such an important concept and it's so kind of difficult to explain. And so thank you. The point being is I really did spend a lot of time trying to make this stuff as kind of easy to understand as possible. Okay, let's see. Let me scroll up. Lots of people are on tonight. And Lainey asks, hey, Dana, do you have a P.O. box? I have some art I would want to send to you that I've been working on. I would love that. And yes, I do. If you would like my P.O. box, I believe it's in the About section on YouTube. But if not, if you have a pen handy, it is, hold on, I have it written down because it's, for some reason, I have trouble remembering it. And I always get the street wrong. Because, hold on, let's see. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Here we go. Okay, so my P.O. box, it's Dana Morningstar at P.O. Box 464, Mason, Michigan, 48854. So that should get to me. And then I will make an announcement or post something to let you know that I got it once you send it. So that would be awesome. I love art. I just love getting stuff. It's so cool. So thank you guys for, it's, artwork or, even just a postcard to say, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm having a good time, or, whatever. It's fun to connect with people in the mail. So, okay, let me scroll up. Okay, James asks, is this love bombing? My girlfriend at the time, before I married her, made this big Valentine's Day gift, a bouquet of candy. We'd been dating like 8 months. It generally no, stuff like that. I mean, if you've been dating for 8 months, love bombing, but it's also kind of dependent upon the situation. Love bombing tends to happen early on in a relationship, and it tends to be a lot of it's intensity, and it's a lot of attention and affection and very flowery language. Just a person really coming on, just laying it on thick, really trying to lure somebody in. It can be talking and texting for hours every single day, promises of a future together, saying like, I love you, you're so amazing. I've never met anybody like you. I feel like we have the soulmate connection. It comes across as it can come across as either very flattering to a person who's not aware that it's a problem, or it can come across as insincere. If a person is if a person's more in tune with their instincts, it tends to come across as insincere or too much too soon, or immature is how it comes across. I think a good example of love bombing is the movie How Stella Got Her Groove Back. So when Stella goes to Jamaica and she meets Winston, and he's really laying it on thick, and what I like about that movie is you can really see it's a true story. It's the author's true story. You can see her falling into that cognitive dissonance and going back and forth. This is really strange. This seems too good to be true. Why is all of a sudden this young, handsome, hunky guy so incredibly just enamored with me for no reason whatsoever. And she really wants so much to believe that this could be true, but she kept thinking like, this is, and even in the movie, she's like, this is immature, this is insane. What are we doing? What are you doing? How can you love me? I'm the age of your mother, all of these things. And that movie, just as an FYI, it ends on a high note that she ends up meeting this, Winston's her Prince Charming and everything works out. But the real life story, fast forward 7 years, then he comes out that he's actually gay and filed a lawsuit when they were divorcing. It was a very nasty divorce, very expensive divorce, and he was really going after her finances. And of course, knowing what we know these days about how scammers tend to operate, to me, it's very clear that that's what happened. She was targeted by this young guy in Jamaica who she came across like she had money. She was an American citizen, and he just told her everything she wanted to hear. And he was very charming, and he charmed her and he charmed her family, and her family had all of the same concerns, but he was just so nice and so wonderful. But the reality is, all of that charm, he was Prince Charming, but he was earning it. He was earning the money that he intended to get from her and the citizenship that he intended to get from her. So, yeah, but okay. So back to the whole love bombing thing. So love bombing in relationships, it tends to be part of that idealized stage. And so it can happen again if a relationship is on that like makeup, breakup kind of a track, then it's very common for an abuser to come back out of the blue. And it's oftentimes like either nothing happened, or they can pretend like they have full accountability for what they did. And there's a lot of future faking. There's a lot of, empty promises. There's a lot of just sweet words. Don't you remember how we used to be? I love you so much. I've never met anybody like you. Sending memes, probably my guess would be memes of toxic relationships like Joker and Harley Quinn, or things like that, was sort of like, look at how much we've gone through, right? But the reality is it's more of like, look how much you've actually been put through. And suffering, and love don't go hand in hand. So I hope that kind of clears that up. Let's see. Yeah, Exotic Hair says, my narcissist even asked me to marry him within the first week. Yes, so that kind of stuff. Moving very quickly, and it really does tend to feel like this is really off, very immature. But I think there's a part of a lot of us that want to believe in that idealized version of love. I mean, it's what you see in the movies, it's what you see on TV. Especially nowadays, there's so many ridiculous shows out there, like, the people getting like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and it's not how mature, healthy people go about finding love. Like it's reckless and it's ridiculous. And of course it's not going to work, right? Because you don't know the person. But in online dating and stuff, they're so quick to just move so quick, and to just be like, you're so amazing. I love you. I've never thought about having children before, but now that I've met you, and it's just very schmoozy and very over the top. James is saying, yeah, I'm just trying to find some more red flags so I can write them down and remember them. So with that, James, I would encourage you, instead of trying to find red flags and see if that fits your situation, ask yourself, go back, hindsight being what it is, go back and ask yourself, okay, what felt off? Because sometimes it's not something that we can pinpoint like, oh, it's love bombing. Sometimes it might have just been the way that a person said something or a look that they gave you. There's tends to be a few of those moments where you're like, boy, that was weird. And, so kind of go back and examine like what felt off and what ended up kind of leading to some really problematic behavior. Yes, absolutely. Nathan says the love bombing, it's not healthy, that's for sure, but it is healthy to recognize that it's not healthy. Yes, absolutely. And then here's kind of the added crazy making part to that is other people who haven't gone through something like this, the vast majority of them are going to try to talk you out of it. Oh, you're afraid to love. Don't let your past hurt get in the way of your future happiness. You've got to trust sometime. And then we've got friends and family, maybe people that have our best interests in mind, that want us to be happy. And all they're seeing is this really charming person. But if you're sensing that something's off, it's generally because something is off. But it might not be concrete enough that we can actually point to it. It might just be that kind of feeling of, that's weird, because anything can be justified, right? So, but just because it can be justified doesn't mean that we should justify it. And so yeah, pay attention to all of that well-intended bad advice that's floating around out there, because there's no shortage of that. Sable asks, speaking of art, what is that blue butterfly looking one in the background? That is a blue butterfly looking thing in the background. I painted that one night at my kitchen table with my hands shortly after my relationship ended with Jack. And I had, my house at the time was this little tiny mountain cabin. It was so cute. And I had a sunroom, and I was really having to fight to keep my mind in a good place, because I was very isolated, and physically and emotionally, and in just lots of different ways. And so I was putting up things all over my house, and I decided, I'm like, I really need some artwork, like to just keep me in a good place and to keep my mindset and moving in a positive direction. And so that was one of the things that I painted. I'm like, this is going to be me, like me flying free, me moving forward in this next chapter. And I hung that in my sunroom where I would see it every single day. And I also I have all kinds of things. It's at my other place, but or my friend's house, that I have it's something very similar to this hanging thing here. It says grateful, clarity, powerful, vibrant, free. I had another one of those that I made with magic marker or like a Sharpie and a styrofoam core board. And I called it my Buddha board. And it was just a bunch, again, more sayings to really keep my mind on a positive track. I also had that in my sunroom, and I made poster boards. I did one of the Serenity Prayer. I did one, I still have them, but they're at my friend's house. One of a quote that I heard from Joyce Meyer that just really resonated with me, and the reason it resonated with me is because I didn't believe in it at the time. And the quote was something like, I believe that something good will happen to me and through me today. And I didn't believe that. I was at such a dark, fearful, scared place. And so I wanted to believe that, and I wanted to steer into that direction, and I wanted to make that happen. Because at that point in my life, I was almost afraid of good things happening, because the good things in my life that had happened, like with Jack and with Steve, turned out to be absolutely awful. And so I developed this like fear of good things happening, because it was like waiting for the other shoe to drop, But I wanted to believe that. And actually, I started actually making that happen. That was one of it's amazing, the stuff that, you just kind of forget over time. But I had decided the one thing that I had control over was making something good happen through me. And so I had a friend that was going through a divorce in another state, and I was sending him cards. I was sending text messages, and I was making it a point to be like, okay, I have control over this. I can make something good happen through me, And so just giving him words of encouragement and support during that made me feel better. It's made me feel like there were still, good things could still happen. And it, it feels good to just be there for somebody else. And I think on some level too, it did make me feel like I had, more control over my life. So there was a lot of different things I did. You probably heard me talk before, but also at that time I had kind of declared the color red my color to remind myself that I loved me. And it was this moment I had in my bathroom where I was getting out of the shower and just crying and just being like, what is so wrong with me? Why does happiness seem reserved for everybody else but me? Why am I so unlovable? And then just being like, but you know what, damn it. There's a lot about me that's good and right and lovable. And I guess I'm going to start loving me. And it was with that thought was just kind of the realization of that I hadn't been loving myself, that I was really looking outside of myself for other people to love me. And so I decided, yeah, I'm going to make this declaration here and now that I'm going to start loving me, and I'm going to start reminding myself that I matter and that I'm lovable. And so I went to, I think it was, no, I was thinking it was Target, but it wouldn't have been because we didn't have a Target. It was probably Walmart. Yeah, it must have been Walmart to get red towels. And so I bought some red towels, and I bought some other things that were red. And I've got this red cup, and I've got some other, I have a little red heart somewhere around here. And I told all my friends, this is what I'm doing. And so then people began buying me red things. It makes me, it was so touching as their way of just saying we love you too. And we're here, So the point being, I think having those visual reminders can really, really help. And even though they might be subconscious, I don't think about every single time when I go get this mug out of the cabinet that I love myself, but every now and again I do. And I think on a subconscious level, it's just that reminder of, hey, you know what? You matter, So just some things to think about. Okay, let's see. Exotic Hair says, Dana, please answer my question. Is my ex calling because he really wants to talk to the children 4 times a day and take me to court for custody because he really loves the kids? Or is this about me? Well, I obviously don't know your ex, but the pattern tends to be with manipulative, controlling, and or abusive people that it's always all about them. And manipulation, it's a game. Everything's a game, and everything's a pawn in their game. And if his past behavior has been that he's shown a jaw-dropping level of selfishness, it's all about him, then I think that you would be correct in assuming that his current behavior is the exact same. Because people like that really don't tend to change. And if they do, you're talking, years of intensive therapy. So I would assume that it's just more of the game. It's very common for them to start manipulating the kids. There is a great book out there called Divorce Poison, which I highly recommend. And it's about going through a divorce and dealing with a high conflict or very manipulative person. And it has a bunch of strategies to help prevent manipulation of your children and to help just kind of ease the process as much as you possibly can. But I definitely wouldn't think if somebody's really shown you that they don't have a conscience or a moral compass, they're not going to all of a sudden grow one. So even though we want to hold on to hope that maybe they really do love their children, maybe they really have turned a corner, the only proof is changed behavior over a consistent period of time. And, that'll tell you what you need to know. So I hope that helps. Let's see. Let me scroll down here. Bonnie's talking to Tanitria and says, yes, I'm horrified that I ever got involved with him. I stayed And no less, I stayed for 30 years. I really hoped and prayed he would change. It's not going to happen. You know, and it's so hard. It's one of those things that just keeps a person on the hook, especially if they do apologize, or even if they just show crumbs of insight into their behavior. It's like, okay, maybe now things are actually going to be different. And it's just really difficult for normal, decent people to wrap their mind around the fact that there's people like this that walk the earth, and that we could actually fall in love with one of them. You know, and especially because it's like, man, it would take so much energy to keep up with the games and it's like falling in love with a bully or an internet troll, you know? And it's like, why can't you just be happy? Like, why can't we just be happy and work towards a solution for things? Like, why all of the games and the gaslighting and the projection and the pot stirring and the triangulation and just all of it? I mean, it just seems like such an exhausting way to live, but you know, it's just terrible. There is a book too, we read for book club a little while back called Necessary Endings, that I think is fantastic. And that, frankly, I think it's kind of a sleeper in the sense that it flies under the radar. You know, there's so many things I like about that book, but one of the things I like about it is he really talks about understanding that there's different types of people out there, and how to realize what kind of person we're dealing with, and what kind of approaches we should take. And he uses examples, and I said this before, but when I was reading the book, I really thought to myself at first, I'm like, because it reads like a business book for the first, I don't know, 50, 60 pages. And I thought, am I reading the right book? And I kept going, and I was, thankfully, but he gives examples of problematic situations in a wide variety of areas. And I really liked that, because I think it's a lot easier to see when it's in a wide variety of situations. So, because when you're dealing with a relationship where everybody's so, you're emotionally invested in it, and the more emotionally invested a person is in something working out, the more difficult it is for them to see it clearly. That's with anybody in any situation. It's a lot easier to see a problematic situation in other people or in a work environment when there's not that deep emotional investment there. So it was a very great book, very eye-opening. He talks about, some things just need to end, and here's how to know when to end something. Great book. Let's see. Let me scroll up here. Colleen says, I split up with him 3 months ago, and I'm finally getting to that stage where I realize he didn't really care about me. It is so hard to accept and move on from. Yeah, that is, I think, perhaps the hardest part about healing or moving on is just realizing that. But, I think two of the things that helped me, the first one is realizing that, we fell in love with, let's say, getting caught up in a spider's web. Like, we fell in love with a person with a pathological personality. It's like, it's not us, it's them. Like, we had sincere intentions. We wanted a relationship. We thought we were in a relationship with another normal, decent human being, and it turns out we weren't. So it's very difficult for a normal, decent person to see something like that coming. It really, really is. And the second part of that is, I think what helped me, I think just realizing again that it's not so much anything that we couldn't have changed it. There's nothing about us that, we didn't deserve it. We're not to blame for it. Like, this is them. And I've talked about this before, but one of the things that helped me was in realizing with these personality types is your 100% that you give in a relationship, or that level of emotional depth that you have, that level of caring and bonding, your 100%, or I should say, their 100% is your 10%. So they just do not have that emotional capacity. And there's no depth there. All of their emotions are very superficial. That's why they're so flighty. That's why they go from target to target. That's why they're like, you know what, I love you so much, or I hate you so much. It's just, they have the emotional depth of a small child. Like there's just nothing there. So for a normal, healthy, mature person, those roots normally go deep. Like when you care about something, you really care about something, and they are just lacking that for any number of reasons, you know? Oh, I love that. Karen says, Dana, today is my 1-year anniversary for no contact with my ex. The mantra that has helped me was, there is no healthy reason for having him in my life at any level ever again. Love it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Dora says, hi, Dana. It's been a while. I'm 7 months out of the relationship with the narcissist. Best thing ever. I am blessed. Stay strong, friends. Okay. And actually, I've got 2 other comments. And I think this is going to be a new thing that I'm going to start doing at the beginning of the live stream. not however far into it we are. But, you know, I try to read as many comments as I possibly can on YouTube and everywhere, Facebook and everywhere else every week. And I get a ton of them that are really fantastic and worth sharing. But because of the privacy concerns and all of that, I've been really hesitant to go about doing that. So I messaged this person and they got back to me. So I'm going to share. They had 2 fantastic comments that I thought were definitely worth passing on. Okay, the first one, and their name is Sweetbriar McCollum, and they actually have a blog. Their blog is, this person's blog is sweetbriars.blogspot.com. So Sweetbriars, SWEETBRIARS.blogspot.com. I checked out their blog and it's fantastic too. This person is just very articulate. Okay, anyways, comment is, okay, and this is on the video book club for Codependency for Dummies part 2. And they said, okay, at the 59-minute mark, the whole description of how we can take our coping or learned responses from childhood and then apply them to our adult relationships. I wonder if this isn't the engine that provokes confusion and misappropriate responses from who we are in relationships with, leading them to turn around and label us as whatever we are labeling them as, like narcissistic, codependent, or whatever. If we are lucky enough to be in a relationship with a totally normal person, our codependent lenses will frame what is normal as bent. Joe or John normal will not know what is going on inside a codependent's head, and their healthy self-regard and self-care will look like narcissism or indifference to the codependent. They will also want to get away from the codependent's behavior eventually and find someone more like them. Codependents can be very strange to non-codependents. They just don't want all that sacrificial love and care. Normal people don't like enmeshing behaviors long-term. Fantastic comment. And yes, I agree. So, you know, it's been my experience, and what I have noticed in general, especially in my own life, is that we all tend to date or surround ourselves with people based on the same level of function or dysfunction as us. So whether a person drinks a lot, they're probably going to hang out with a bunch of other people that drink a lot. If a person is, you know, really, I don't know, really artistic and into painting, they're probably going to hang out with a bunch of other artists. If a person is codependent, they're probably going to either hang out with a bunch of either other codependents, or they're going to hang out with a bunch of narcissists and not realize it. It's probably more so the latter. There's probably a lot of toxic people in a codependent person's life. And yes, to a normal person, they probably will see that codependence behavior, especially if it's extreme, if it's that kind of that overgiving, that martyring, that kind of keeping a score of, but look at everything I do for you, I should have earned it, right? Like I was so good to you, and I've given, and I give, and I give, and I give, and I give. And so therefore, if I ask you for a favor that you now owe me. Whereas normal health, I should say not normal people, because normal is really just different shades of dysfunction. Healthy people don't think like that. They don't operate like that. A healthy mindset is more of, hey, you know what? I'm living in my truth. I'm walking in my authenticity. And when I say no, I mean no. And when I say yes, I mean yes. And, you know, they just zip right around toxic people for the most part. And if they do get tangled up with a toxic person, it's not for very long. They can see that stuff coming, and they are focused on them, kind of what works for them in their own life. And they're very in tune with their mainly their boundaries. They may or may not be in tune with their intuition, but they're definitely in tune with their boundaries. And they don't easily get manipulated or knocked off balance or knocked off course. So, and I will tell you too, the vast majority of healthy people that I know have once been very unhealthy people, and they've had to learn about all of this stuff. And they generally were at one time more on that codependent side of the spectrum. So, you know, I think, for example, my mom comes to mind with that. You know, when she divorced my father, this was back, I was 13, and I'm terrible at math, and even worse at math in public. So just going to do the math, but it was the early 90s, I think, and maybe even late 80s. The early 90s, I think. And this was when therapy just started really becoming more mainstream, and CODA groups, the Codependency Anonymous and Al-Anon, and was becoming more mainstream. And she was pouring herself into that and trying to figure out her own parental relationship with, with her father and her mother. And, how did I get here, and how do I set boundaries, and, how do I prevent this from happening again? And she really did a ton of work. And for the most part, she's got some of the best boundaries of anybody that I've ever met. Like, she's really on it. So, but it was hard. Those victories were very hard won for her. And it took a lot of her getting pushed around and all the wrong people in her life to get to that place. So I thought that was a really great comment. And yes, the healthier we are, and the more in tune with our intuition and our emotions, and frankly, our self-worth, and understanding what that really is, because that's such a nebulous thing for so many people, myself included, where they're like, okay, you got to love yourself, and, self-worth and self-esteem. And you're like, I don't, yeah, I guess I love myself. I mean, sure, I'm worth it. Like, it just doesn't, it just is very fluffy. Like, it's not tangible. And when you realize that actually loving yourself means standing up for yourself, it means being assertive, it means saying yes when you mean yes, and no when you mean no, and learning how to walk in your truth, that's uncomfortable. And it takes time which is weird, but it takes time to get to that place where, where we are not sacrificing our dignity to keep friendships together or relationships together. And we're not glossing over red flags. And, the more, I think too, the more peace that a person gets in their life, and just kind of peace and harmony and calm, the more they're like, man, I am not giving this up. Like, if your person's going to be in my inner circle, they've really got to be a high quality person, because I don't want that drama and chaos. And then it's with narcissists and toxic people, but with codependent people, it's like, man, I don't want to, and I feel this way now. I'm like, I don't want to be around people that are saying yes when they mean no. And that all of this resentment and frustration and anger is building up. And, here I am thinking everything's fine. And then they one day just explode and this is something that I'm still working on within myself too, So, but I remember when I was a nurse, it was very common and expected for nurses to just give and give and give and give. Like, you're here for the doctors. Man, I tell you, like, being a nurse is really hard. It's a thankless job. Like, you're there for the doctors and you're there for the patients. And it's expected that you're just kind of this mommy in white, and that you don't have any needs, that your feet don't ever hurt, or that you don't have to ever go to the bathroom or want to actually sit down and eat, and people just pile more and more stuff on you. And, they will ask you to do anything from laundry. I mean, you literally are, and that's not, I was going to say, you're like a mom, but even moms shouldn't be treated like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. You're just treated, anyways. So, but there were a lot of nurses that was the expectation, and they really took on that identity of like, we just need to give and give and give. And, because that's what nursing is. It's not a profession, it's a calling. And I think many of us felt like that it was always about other people, putting ourselves last. And when I began to develop healthier boundaries and began to assert myself and say, hey, you know what? We get an hour for lunch. It's not paid. So I'm going to take it. Like, I'm going to eat my lunch and close my office door, and y'all go. Like, I'll see you in an hour. Don't bother me. I love you, but I'll see you in an hour. And started setting boundaries, and people just looked at me like I had peed in the punch. I mean, it was just, they were shocked. How dare you? Like, didn't you get the memo? You're a nurse. So, it's shocking when you start changing up how you do things, because people expect this is the dance. This is just what you do. Oh, you're a parent, you're a mother or father. Well, that means, and as people have this with adult children, right? Like, the adult children will come home, they leave dishes in the sink. They just don't respect the house. They treat it like that their parent is still their parent, versus the relationship is now that of two adults, and that they should actually respect, that they should always, of course, respect their parents' house, right? But like, there's just that level of entitlement with a lot of people. So anyways, okay, River Song, thank you. Says, big hug to everybody here. Great people. Thank you, Dana. And thank you for your comment, and thank you for the live stream donation. So, yep, Tammy was saying, yep, many shifts with no meal or bathroom breaks. Other nurses are in here. Shannon says, oh, doctors, I picked up the doctor's dry cleaning and went to the bank to deposit his very sizable check. Yeah, it's that kind of stuff. Now, granted, thankfully, the doctors that I worked with at my last job, by and large, were absolutely fantastic. I just adored them. We had and I think it was because I worked for, it was a community health place. So nobody was there for the money, because the money was terrible. We got paid like less than half of what people made in, like more of like the corporate places, like at a hospital or whatever. So it was people that really enjoyed, the kind of working with the kind of clients that we served. And so I don't want to knock on all doctors, because like I said, some of them were just absolutely fantastic. But yeah, some of them are just ridiculous. But that was very much the mentality of like, you just give and give and give. So that was one comment I thought was fantastic. So yes, the healthier we get, the healthier other people we tend to be more, people are more comfortable around. It's like that saying, kind of, this might sound really harsh, but like, water seeks its own level. And it's true across the board. Now, this, I will say too, this really tripped me up for a long time with like, well, what does that mean? Like when I was dating Jack and Steve, well, what does that mean? Does that mean that I'm a sociopath? And I couldn't figure that out, because I'm like, well, if like attracts like, then what does that mean? But what it was is we both had unresolved, probably childhood wounds, but we were both relating from a very unhealthy place. And that was what we had in common. So it was very kind of opposites, two sides of the same coin. And it took me a long time to realize that, because the first time it happened, it felt like a fluke. And these people will come across differently every single time. So that's why I really harp on the importance of tuning into your intuition and going with your gut, because not every narcissist or sociopath or whatnot comes across the same way. Just like Casey Anthony is very different from Bill Cosby. That's very different from Trump. That's very different from Harvey Weinstein. That's very different from Charles Manson. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's very different from Chris Brown. And those are just some celebrities that come to mind. But, different, they just come across differently. And so it's important for us to be aware of problematic behavior for what it is, but to especially be more in tune with yourself, with how problematic behavior feels, because that's going to tell you so much more. And we don't have to try to figure it out. We don't have to be like, well, is it me or is it them? And is it because, like, did I read this correctly? And is this, did this really happen this way? And, but maybe I did something, like, all of that kind of rehashing and that introspection. It's totally normal when a person's being messed with. When you're being manipulated, it's normal to be confused. Confusion is a result of being manipulated. But to realize don't even make it about them. It's not even about them. It's about what you want in your life. And if you can get to that place where you're like, you know what? I don't do mental anguish. I don't do confusion, perpetual confusion. I don't do being treated with contempt or a lack of dignity or respect. Like, I don't do that, period, of end of story. Like, don't need to go any further than that. Like, if that's what's happening, then I value my peace. I value myself. I value my life. And the people that are in my inner circle are there because they've earned a spot, and they've earned a spot with appropriate behavior, not just because I've known them since grade school, or because they're my parent, or because they're the same religion as me, or because they're real cute. It's because they've actually earned a spot in my inner circle. So when you really can make that shift into getting in tune with who you are, your external environment is going to start becoming a reflection of your internal environment. So just some thoughts. Okay, so let me read this other comment by this person, because it was, again, actually, before I go into that, let me add on to that a little, just exactly what they were saying about how healthy people view codependent behavior as a big, kind of big red flag, frankly. I was out with two friends of mine last night, and I was talking to this one friend. I said, my new thing lately has been to try to pay attention. I really want to just walk in my authenticity all of the time, and to pay attention to when I am tempted to, or when I actually do tell small little white lies. And I've mentioned this before. This was actually the same friend that we'd gone out to the open houses about a month or so ago. And she was like, we should just make up this whole story about your brothers looking for a house. And I was like, why not let's just tell them the truth, that we're just out going to open houses because they're fun to go to. They're people, realtors are people too. They'll understand, and anyways, so last night I was saying that, and I said, I had to, so I was supposed to do a live stream with Angie Atkinson yesterday. And I put it off, and I was going to have these questions for her, and I was going to do this whole Zoom chat, and I procrastinated, and I didn't come up with the questions I wanted to come up with. And I thought I had the Zoom thing figured out, and I didn't. And so I was gonna message her. So I actually did message her because I had to reschedule. And I found myself wanting to make excuses. You know, like, oh, I'm really sore. I shoveled, which is true. I am still really sore. We had, like, I don't know, a few inches of snow here the other day. Shoveled the drive and the sidewalks and everything. Can we reschedule? Then I was like, that's not 100% true. Like, I'm not rescheduling because I'm sore from shoveling. So I deleted that. And then, I had some other, excuse that was, a half truth, basically. And finally I thought, you know what? No, I'm just gonna stay with the truth of, hey, you know what? Can we reschedule for next week? And not go into a bunch of excuses. And of course she was fine with that. But so anyways, that was like this little mini victory, catching myself with that. And then of course it's interesting then to ask yourself, like, well, why am I not okay with the truth? Like, why am I feeling the need to come up with all of these half truths with things? And and of course in that situation, it was because that was really unprofessional of me, right? To not come up with the questions I needed to come up, and to not have Zoom, the recording thing, figured out yet. I did this before. I'd recorded a Zoom interview and it didn't work, and I was so bummed. Anyways, so it was because I wanted to save face. That was the core of it. So the big lesson learned, and this stuff is practice. Like, it takes practice going through and slowing down your behavior and observing it, and then actually trying to change it. So, and it's amazing how many times that we all, I think, maybe I shouldn't speak for other people, but I think a lot of people will make up little white lies like that to either themselves or to other people, or both, to try to justify, why they're not doing something. Like the example I gave at work, how I finally said one day, hey, I'm going to take my lunch, and I'm not going to go to this meeting. I'm not getting paid to go, basically. Like, I'm going to have my lunch, and I'm going to shut my door, and I'll be out in an hour. And, the old me would have made some excuse. I might have said, oh, you know what? I have a doctor's appointment, or, I don't know. I would have made some excuse. I would have snuck out, and I would have left for an hour and then come back. That's what the old me would have done, because I was not comfortable with that confrontation of just saying, hey, you know what, guys, lunchtime is my time, and as it should be your time too. Like, it's ridiculous. Can we please stop like having these meetings during lunch, So yeah, Colleen was saying, yes, it's very easy to slip into these little white lies. Yeah, good for you. Soccer Moon says, I caught myself telling a white lie to my 10-year-old. Half of it came out of my mouth and my gut screamed at me. I backed up and told the truth. And, I think these kinds of things are so important to really model for children, because this stuff is so socially acceptable for people just to lie about little things, because they're like, oh, it's insignificant. What does it matter? But it does matter, because it's just, why are we not comfortable with the truth? And we're not living, it's just a lot of unnecessary energy that we're exerting too. I remember when I was a kid, when I was probably about 10 years old, and we had a telemarketer call the house, and I answered the phone. My mom was, I don't know, in the living room or something. And this was before caller ID and before voicemail, for sure. We might have had an answering machine, but I, answered the phone and told the gal, my mom wasn't home. And my mom asked me, she said, why did you tell her that I wasn't home? And I remember just thinking, like, well, what does it matter? And it was because I was uncomfortable with saying, oh, my mom doesn't want to talk to a telemarketer, or she's busy right now, watching TV, because that was the truth. So it's just, but that really stuck with me at the time. And probably for years after that, I thought that was nuts. I'm like, oh, you're being so uptight. Like, what does it matter? But, it's, those little things really do matter. Bonnie says, oh, I love Angie Atkinson. She is a ball of giggles. Yeah, she really is super cute. I had not spent a lot of time. I haven't spent any time with her before that. I've seen some of her videos, and yes, she's really cute. She's got this amazing, like, sparkly pink background, and yeah, she's just really cute personality. I'm like, man, I am basic. Like, I need to step up my game. She's got this sequence. She's got sequence. So, okay, let's see. Oh, that's a good comment. Gigi says, I've always shown up authentic, and I think that is what attracted my husband, like shiny metal to a crow. Absolutely. Absolutely. That was one of the things in my situation too with Steve. He was still married when I met him. And well, when I knew him, because I had known him, like, not really known him, I'd known of him casually for a couple of years before we began dating. And he was married, and there was nothing going on. And anyways, so he all of a sudden just sparked this interest in me. And I told him, I said, well, I am not going to get involved with a married man. So if you're really sincere about wanting to divorce your wife, then you need to divorce her. Like, you need to move out, you need to file papers, and please don't divorce her because of me. Like, I don't want that pressure. If your marriage is really over, then you need to end it. And he had this whole story about, they were in separate bedrooms and they lived, she was nice, but they lived like friends and blah, blah, blah. I believed him. And I remember thinking it was weird because he had said something along the lines of, like, basically that I had a strong, I had good morals, and that he knew he made a good choice. Because I told him, I said, I'm not getting involved with you until, you move out and file papers. So I agree completely with you. I think a person with solid morals on that level, it really can be, we're an easy target for them, because they're like, oh, this person, I can keep them on the hook for a while. But that's really where having those healthy boundaries come into play, and in knowing, and just the awareness that these people roam the earth, and that they can come across as so charming. And, they don't come across like the bad guy. Oftentimes they don't look mean and menacing and intimidating like the bad guys do in the movies. Most of the time. Okay. Let's see, okay, I was going to read that other comment. Okay, this is kind of a long one here. This is fantastic as well. This person says, regarding the concept of the inner child, I was listening to Pia Melody talk about how she developed the concept years ago and how she intended it to be used in therapy. The inner child, according to Pia, always refers to wounds you experienced as a child and how those wounds never healed, or how those wounding experiences were not resolved as you grew up. Her point was that we don't all have an inner childlike personality that remains for life, but as codependents or addicts, we have childish parts of our mental development that have never grown since that original wounding. As a result, we still respond to situations or aspects of the world as if we were still that age and still confused, angry, or hurt. The goal then of recovery is to find those places within ourselves where we are reflexively responding out of those wounds, explore the experiences we are still reenacting as if we were that little child, acknowledge and comfort ourselves for what happened because no one acknowledged and comforted us back then, and then learn how to keep our adult selves in charge of our reflexes and behaviors now. With Pia, it's all about growing up. The child you once were becomes whole and integrated with who you are now. Then you become free to be who you are and want to be, neither childish nor the person you were 40 years ago, but mature and wise. I wrote all of that to say that I'm finding that when one does start to recognize and deal with those old wounds, growth is inevitable. I mean that. In my limited experience, I can't stop the healing and growing from happening. I would agree completely. The inner child in me that's been pulling my string every time issue X comes up is fading now that I'm accepting and dealing with X. I understand what I've been doing. I've forgiven 5-year-old me for keeping me doing it. After all, that's all she knows. But I'm resolving the problem too by applying what I know now to what happened then. I love little 5-year-old me, but my expectation is that she will become as quiet and as unobtrusive as 15 years ago me. My long-term expectation is that me right now will become the only me I have ever dealt with. Excuse me, that's not. My long-term expectation is that me right now will become the only me I ever have to deal with, and she will have both traits of maturity and childlike openness, tools to employ as wisely as my years will allow in any situation. Fantastic. I just was floored when I read those comments. They were just so well said. And I agree completely. And I just love the way that she articulated it. And I definitely don't think that I was connecting the inner child. I think I was kind of dancing around, like orbiting around that concept. But so I feel like I had parts of what she was saying, but it's like I needed to read that comment in order to fully connect those dots. So I just think she nailed it. Absolutely. So, and I had talked about inner child in terms of reconnecting with like our authentic self. And I like what she was saying about that. I think that's definitely a part of it, but then also understanding our inner child as that wounded child and where are those wounds? And then once we heal those wounds, we're no longer taking action from a place of that wounding. We develop that integrated self, and we're taking action from a place of like an empowered, healthy, balanced adult. So I love that. I'm so glad that she made that comment. Dandelion says, can you post a link to her written comments? I would like to reread them. Yes, absolutely. And just if you're listening to this too, I will post them down in the description below after this video finishes rendering, after it goes live. But if you want to read it now, it's on the last video we did, the book club for Codependency for Dummies, part 2. That's where that comment is. Blue Moon asks, how do you handle it when you tell the truth and the other person gets mad at you? Well, I think it depends on kind of what's going on. So there's definitely a way to tell the truth and be tactful. So I don't know if that's part of the situation or if it's, and frankly, this is one of the things I love about Europeans, and actually most people in other parts of the world in general, I think tend to be more just upfront with things. Like they don't have that level of, I don't know, like walking on eggshells that I think so many of us Americans have. But that aside, people are going to get uncomfortable. And this is, I think, one of the hardest things about drawing boundaries is feeling uncomfortable and then moving forward anyhow. And what I have found, this was one of the part of my conversation with my friend last night. One of the things I found is that it can be really uncomfortable saying no to a friend or no to other people, or, just being honest like that. But I will tell you though, that people, and some people might leave. They might interpret that like Sweetbriar was saying, they might interpret that as narcissism. Like, you're trying to set a boundary with me? Like, what? Now you're not going to watch my kids all weekend? And again, it goes back to like that codependent mindset where a lot of people are like, I'm trying to, because it's not direct communication. It's everything's so indirect and implied and inferred and expected, and that weird kind of earning. Like, if I give and get, or maybe it's the expectation of you give and give and give because, you're my daughter or my son or my wife or my mother or what have you. When we start setting boundaries and saying no to other people, it's probably going, especially if they're so used to us always saying yes, it's probably going to come across as that we are being mean and cruel and terribly unfair because they're not used to it. And it's really having to retrain the people around us. And it takes time. But I will tell you, if they stick around, then I think they'll start to really value the interactions more, because they know, they're like, you know what, I feel like this person really is being sincere. When they say yes, they mean yes. So I don't have to worry about somebody doing something out of like guilt or obligation or pity or what have you. Like, they're in my life and they're doing what they want to do for healthy reasons, and it's within what's comfortable for them, not for any other reason. And that's so refreshing, because then there isn't any of that like built up frustration or resentment or any of that. It's two people trying to walk in their truth and, being fully present for the other person, basically. So yes, it takes time, and it will ruffle feathers. And anticipating, I think, can be a big help with that. So if you're trying to kind of repattern, if you're trying to change the dance, then, letting it can really ruffle things if a person all of a sudden just does an abrupt 180, so kind of doing things a little different. So here's something that one of the things I used to do when I used to work at a group home with teenagers that were in and out of juvenile hall. And so it was like a kind of a last chance placement thing. So a lot of these kids didn't grow up. They either grew up with a ton of rules and structure that was all based around, but it was a very anxious, they grew up in like very anxious, anxiety inducing environments, or it was the exact opposite where they had no structure and no rules. And so for us trying to get these kids on track, doing things like setting them up to win, where with normal kids, we wouldn't have to say, you wouldn't have to tell a kid, hey, we're leaving for school at 7:30, we're out the door at 7:30. You wouldn't have to necessarily remind them to make sure that they've got their backpack and that they, have their hair brushed and, they have their homework and they have lunch and all of that stuff. And with these kids, emotionally, they were like 10 years younger, which was such a weird disconnect, because here you had these kids that might've been there for like attempted murder, being in gangs, hardcore, very adult stuff. But at the same time, it was like dealing with 10-year-olds. And so it was just very strange, this disconnect, because, very immature, but yet very adult kids. But so setting boundaries with them so they knew what to expect. So setting them up to win and saying, okay, guys, here's the deal. We're leaving at 7:30 in the morning. Everybody, make sure that you've got, like, here's a checklist. Maybe it's on the fridge, or let's do this the night before. Everybody puts their stuff out, like setting them up to win. And then at 7:10, because we had a house full, I think it was 6 girls at that time, 6 girls and I think 2 bathrooms. So we would say things like, okay, at 7:10, start giving warnings. Okay, we're leaving, and actually we would start before then. Like, 6:40. Okay, guys, we're leaving in 50 minutes. Okay, guys, it's 7:10. We're leaving in 20 minutes. Okay, guys, it's 7:20, we're leaving in 10 minutes. So at 7:30, when that came around, it wasn't a big shock. Nobody lost track of time. It was just helping them to just stay structured. And it smoothed out a lot of things because those kids had a lot of trouble tracking time, had trouble kind of just getting things together and just getting out the door. So, but it was really cool because then over time, they would fall into that routine, and then they would know, we would encourage them, like, you guys keep your eye on the clock. You got to pace yourself. There's six teenage girls in this house. So, if your morning routine, plan it out, like plan ahead. Can you do your makeup in your bedroom, and how long does it take you to shower, and who needs to shower first? And, helping them think that through. So like with kids, I think of any age, is helping them play as much of a part in that process as far as like boundary setting as is age appropriate and as is possible. So they can learn these skills, So, and then at work and stuff like that with setting boundaries, I think it helps to also kind of like sandwich stuff. So, like when I told my coworkers, hey guys, I'm not going to do working lunches anymore. Like I'm going to sit in my office. I'm going to close the door and watch YouTube. So I love you, but I'll see you in an hour. So letting them know that I wasn't mad at them. I still wanted to be a team player, but I needed my alone time. And at first, like I said, there was one nurse in particular that just was shocked. And that whole lunch period, I felt really anxious. Like, am I going to because man, I tell you, it was a bunch of passive aggressive behavior. It was a bunch of silent treatment and storming around and slamming cabinets, and nobody had direct communication with each other because everybody wanted to just be like, no, everything's fine, and it was so I was like, oh man, what am I going to walk into when I open my door? Kind of passive aggressive stuff is this going to be? But you know what? I held my ground and things were fine. And then it was just unknown. And actually then more nurses began taking their lunch. And it wasn't such a taboo thing. So I'm like, what are we doing? Like, this is nuts. Can we please just try to enjoy our job and enjoy being here and not develop resentment? Okay, let's see. Kitties Are Cute says, I remember when I was first learning about red flags that I would focus on anything that I had ever done at any age and forget how seldom I ever did anything narcissistic. Well, and I think too with behavior, realizing this is all within the realm of human behavior. It's the degree and frequency that's the problem. And so some of this stuff is odds are we're going to see within ourselves, right? So like with love bombing, that's probably a really common one, or rushing intimacy, or the whole whirlwind romance, or that level of intensity. We might see this and be like, this is describing me, right? Like this, oh no, what does this mean? But so many of us that are on the opposite side of the spectrum fall into that. And we might even do a lot of the love bombing, and it's because in one of the Pia Melody videos, I took a picture of it because it was so fantastic. She wrote something on a chalkboard or a dry erase board that was she's fantastic. She's got a bunch of older videos on YouTube that are definitely worth checking out. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Yes, here it is. Basically, the core issues that people struggling with codependency have to overcome. And again, even if you don't identify as being codependent, I think a lot of these concepts are still incredibly relevant, because what we're really talking about is a healthy degree of alignment with ourselves. And that's something that everybody can benefit from. So there's 5 main things here. that are these core issues. First one is people that struggle with codependency. They lack self-love. They don't know how to protect themselves. They really struggle with like blurred boundaries and a solid sense of self. They struggle with self-care. And number 5, they struggle with moderation. And that one was the most profound, because that's one of the hardest things, I think, for people to break, to get in, to realize that moderation is healthy and to break that cycle, because so many of us, we get caught up with that love bombing, and then any other relationship tends to feel really flat or boring because we got so hooked on the fairy tale. We got hooked with that intensity. But intensity is, problematic. And so if that's our baseline for like what healthy love is, we're going to continue crashing in to emotional manipulators, and with friendships, with work dynamics, with significant others, with family, with whatever a manipulator in our life, because we're misreading the situation from the get-go. So intensity is never a substitution for intimacy, and it's definitely never a substitution for like trust or taking time to actually get to know somebody. So it's just really important to go slow and have that moderation. That, and I'd mentioned this before, but this was one of the things that really tripped me up, because people would always say, people talk about, oh, well, women just like bad boys, or women like guys that treat them like crap. And that has never been my situation. And so I couldn't figure out, I'm like, well, then what does that mean? Because my situation was, I kept finding myself attracted to the Prince Charming type guys out there. And then when things would go really like crazy south, it's like, again, like, how did this happen again? What am I missing? Like, what's going on here? And it took me years, like years, to figure out what the problem was. And the problem was, I kept thinking love bombing was real. And I was mistaking that intensity for sincerity. And again, so back to that movie, How Stella Got Her Groove Back, she talks she did some interviews with Oprah, like 7 years later. And one of the things that she said in the interview was that he was so good to her the whole time that that's now going to be the standard by which she measures all other men. And I just, when she said that, it broke my heart, because it was like, Stella, Terry is her real name, Terry, like none of it was real. This guy was playing the part, like he was earning it. He was an actor earning this money, waiting for his payday, waiting for his citizenship. And that's what so many of us do, myself included. I was like, man, this is what, like, I don't know why things went so south and what happened, and thank goodness I found out as much as I did with Jack. It made it really a lot easier to walk away. But had I not known that, I would have totally gotten caught up in that cycle of, what did I do wrong? How did things go so south? I thought he was my best friend. I thought he was my soulmate. I thought, all of these things, because he was doing the same thing, and just trying to earn whatever money he thought that I had, and so anyways, realizing that level of intensity and somebody coming on so strong right out of the gate, treating you like you're the most amazing thing in their world, is not healthy. Normal, healthy people don't do that. Okay. So let's see, let me scroll up here. Venice, Italy says, the guilt tripping, the pity ploys, the obligatory ruses aren't working. But as the love bombing is so intense, I'm wondering if they're planning to treat me badly the minute I react. Well, if you're experiencing guilt tripping, pity ploys, and obligatory ruses, then I would say yes, because, and I mean, none of it's real, right? Like it's all manipulation. So I don't know. And I think too, realizing like, you know, we set the pace. No, healthy people. So let me compare this, like old me versus new me. Okay. So old me, if I would have said that, if I would have said, you know, you set the pace on a relationship or a friendship or what have you, the old me would have heard that and been like really confused by that. I would have been like, well, that seems really, you know, selfish. Like, aren't relationships supposed to be a give and take? And, you know, like two become one, and there's, you know, finding middle ground and compromise. Like, shouldn't both people set the pace together? That's what old me would have thought. New me realizes that healthy people are always setting the pace of every single thing that they're in, that they don't continually compromise with their boundaries when their boundaries are involved. They might compromise about, you know, dinner or like, you know, I don't know what kind of comforter or sheet set to buy, stuff like that, but they're not, they're saying no when they mean no. They're saying yes when they mean yes. There's that give and take, but it doesn't have to do with setting the pace of like the relationship. So because they're living in their truth. So if something's not okay with them, they speak up and they act accordingly. So okay, so let me just elaborate on this. So old me might have even spoken up in a few situations and said, hey, like I'm not going to be treated like that. Or old me would have been more like aggressive back, thinking that that was actually setting a boundary and me being assertive. That's what old me would have thought being aggressive was being assertive. And old me probably would have also thought that being passive aggressive, slamming doors, freezing someone out, I mean, like, well, I'll show him or I'll show her, was being assertive, and it's not. And so new me realizes, you know, being assertive, first off, being assertive sooner than later, it's a lot easier when there's not all that like built up frustration and resentment and anger. So if an issue is an issue, to just bring it up right away. And I remember I lived with this gal in college. We had this crazy house full of women in college. We could not have been more different than we were. And my my one friend, my one roommate, my one friend, Jen, was very assertive, very grounded, very no nonsense. Like you didn't have to wonder what was going on with her. And she just was very straightforward, but in a tactful, healthy, balanced way. Then we had this girl named Susie who was awful. Like she didn't talk. She was mean. She was aggressive and passive aggressive and just had a temper. She was awful. And she was hardly ever home, which was a good thing. Then there was this girl named Carrie who we got along famously. We had so many things in common, but we were both, our thing was we didn't bring up issues. We would just pretend that everything was okay all the time. And we were always very people pleasing, I think, very agreeable, and didn't see that as a problem at all. And I remember one time there was some sort of issue in the house, and Jen just walked into the room and she made it very clear. She's like, I just want you guys to know that unless you let me know that there's a problem, I'm not going to worry about it. And I just remember being stunned because I had never, it was just such a different approach. Like, well, really? Because our whole normal approach was, no, like you're supposed to know that there's a problem, but we're not supposed to talk about it. And we're all going to walk on eggshells, and people are just going to be passive aggressive, and that anger and resentment's going to really grow and grow, and until like we get either in a big fight or we just quit talking to each other. So I don't know what the point of that was, but I guess the point of it is it takes practice, and it's interesting when you start seeing how healthy people, respond to situations. Okay, let me scroll up here. Oh, actually, I had one more comment that I wanted to read. This gal left it on here, and I feel so bad. I didn't get to her comment, but it was because I didn't see it. Hold on. Here it is. Okay, this is from Karn. Karn says, I asked this question 3 times during the live stream, but it was never answered. I don't know if you didn't notice it or if you simply avoided it, as the theme was, when we're talking about supernatural stuff. But I'm in the UK and I stayed up especially to ask it. So I'm asking it here again. Dana, you said that you respectfully disagreed with Craig Malkin's overt-covert distinction. I always understood covert to mean that grandiosity and certain other defining traits were hidden, which is pretty much in line with what he said, but not to mean that abusiveness is hidden, as all abusers do that in order to be effective. What was your objection? Okay, great question. And I don't remember disagreeing with him, but maybe I did. If I did, it was more about the terms. So there's, how do I even say this? Okay, so there's overt and covert behavior. So overt is more outright, covert is more hidden. So I agree with what he's saying. I guess my focus is less on like the different distinctions of narcissists, because to me, that's sort of like trying to figure out which poison am I drinking? Is it strychnine? Is it arsenic? Is it bleach? Like it really, that I see a lot of people get derailed by that, and they start trying to really figure out, do this deep dive into narcissism and try to figure out, am I dealing with like a somatic, they're just like subtype. And I get that for a lot of people, that's really helpful, and I'm not knocking that. But the reason I tend to steer clear of that is I'm trying to paint like a big broad brush picture of understanding abuse, because again, these people come across in all different ways. So I guess to answer the question, there's overt and covert behavior in terms of abuse. And yes, that is correct. So with the vulnerable narcissists, normally, like that normal classification is that especially the grandiosity. So those more defining characteristics are covert, they're more hidden. So vulnerable narcissists they don't come across as arrogant or brash or grandiose. They tend to come across as vulnerable, baby bird with a broken wing kind of thing, but they aren't. Like it's all a ruse. So I apologize if I was confusing about that or what have you. But like I think I don't know if it was that live stream or not, or if it was another live stream, we were talking about this. It's been my experience with vulnerable narcissists, because that tends to be the type that I attract and that I am attracted to, is the baby bird with a broken wing. They tend to be very intelligent and very sympathetic characters. Is with them, I've seen that behavior come across in a variety of ways. I've seen it come across with more of like that the kind of textbook version of a narcissist, where there is that grandiosity and arrogance and brashness and stuff there. But then it's weird. It's like very split. Like, so you'll see, for me, like I would see some of that, I mean, ridiculousness, like legit grandiosity, thinking this one guy that I don't even know if you'd call it dating, talking to online for a few months, really felt he thought he was a genius and that he should really get his IQ checked because he was certain he was a genius, and he was going to start this philosophy channel, and he like literally thought he just had it all figured out. And he was a smart guy. So it kind of took me a while before I started realizing, yeah, this is, his self-perception is not reality. But whenever he was criticized, he would absolutely crumble like a little child and just regress. It was just, I don't know if I'd ever really seen that before. It was really, really strange. And so it was two very different sides. Like that baby bird, he would turn into that baby bird with a broken wing. Whereas other times he was like a big old peacock strutting his stuff. So there's that. And then I've seen it come. So I don't, maybe I'm mistaken with the concepts of vulnerable narcissists. So please correct me if I am. But then the other way that I've seen this come across is where a person really does tend to come across as a sympathetic character. I was, and there might even be some truth to it. Like, oh, I was abused as a child and I just don't trust anybody. And, you're the only person I've ever opened up to. I saw this more so when I was a nurse, when I was a psychiatric nurse. Nobody gets me like you do. And, really kind of setting this, buttering you up, like kind of setting the stage for further manipulation down the road, and really creating this kind of us versus the world type dynamic of I'm just a fragile, damaged creature out here alone in the world, and I need you, kind of a thing. And of course, then, especially as a nurse, like you've got their whole file, which I don't think that they realized half the time. And it's like, oh, really? You're actually very worldly, but you're playing like you're this very delicate little child, and you're not. So those have been kind of the main ways I've seen that come across. I'd be curious to know what other people have experienced. Okay. Stainless, let me address that because that's a really great point. So Stainless says, could you people imagine if we put all of this energy here tonight on something we're passionate about, how much could be accomplished? That's what really makes me angry. How much energy they have stolen from us. I felt like this for a while too. And I think that's very normal. But here's the thing is you're growing. Like the way that I view it as, it's like caterpillars turning into butterflies. Your brain is, I just imagine, a room. You remember those old videos from like the 70s? They'd go into a room and there's all these mainframe computers and they're all working overtime, computing data. That's what it's like when you go through something like this. Like your brain is in overdrive and you're looking up all of the distinctions with like vulnerable narcissists and understanding abuse and understanding, boundaries and all of this stuff. What you're doing is seriously some of the most important work that you will ever do in your whole entire life. And I know that it might feel like you're kind of just spinning in circles right now, or that this isn't really productive, but I guarantee you that thinking about all of this stuff, especially the parts that have to pertain to us, right? Like the boundaries and the standards and the intuition and getting in tune with yourself and figuring out, just like leaning into yourself. That's the big kind of almost that's like the gift in all of this. It's the thing that we can squeeze out. I should say that. So it's, it's where the power is at. So I know it might feel more productive to be like, man, if we could pour at least 10% of this energy into like learning the piano or dancing or going to the gym, like we would all just be, bodybuilder pianists. But doing this work, this inner child stuff and figuring this stuff out and healing and understanding your emotions so much better and learning to develop a healthy relationship with yourself and healing all of and I think, frankly, I think everybody's got wounded child stuff within them. Everybody does. And frankly, if they haven't, then they're in for a hell of a time as an adult because they haven't developed resiliency, as far as I'm concerned. So people will probably disagree with me on that, but I just think there's a lot to be said for going through some stuff when you're a kid, and then it takes these types of situations for it to bring it to our attention, and then we can actually work through it and heal it. Okay. That's a very valid point. Gigi says, yeah, well, the terms matter when searching for appropriate therapists, books, support groups, and podcasts to aid in healing the trauma. Valid point. Yes. And I definitely don't mean to diminish that at all. That my book, the Start Here book, it has a ton of terms in it for that reason. I know I totally get it. Like, the terms are really great pointers to letting people know, like, what you experienced is not like you. Like, it's not within the realm of like what you think is out there and what you think is possible. So it's incredibly validating, especially terms like gaslighting and projection, and even narcissist and sociopath or sociopathy is such a wait, what? I could have been dating somebody that was like Ted Bundy or at least, same type of personality disorder. And I just didn't, it's so mind boggling, all of it, when you start really diving into it. So I get it. Okay, let's see. Kitties are cute says, I know I've felt guilt about the quote unquote, if they're family, I should be close. But I've come to realize that family is just DNA and marriage. Be with those who you want to be around, not just because of DNA. Yes, I agree completely. And I remember somebody hearing that. This was years ago. Somebody saying something like, if they weren't family, would you still spend time with them? And there's a lot of family that I was like, no, like, come on. Who really, like, you have people in your family that you actually, like, really enjoy, like, you would hang out with outside of family functions. And that was such a big aha moment of, why are you spending time around family members that stress you out and make you sick, and because you're spending them out of obligation is what it is, right? And then making that shift to be like, you know what? I think I'm going to spend time around family that are enjoyable for me to be around. And then maybe I even need to monitor my time with that. And if it's only enjoyable for 3 hours, I need to quit lying to myself thinking that it's going to be enjoyable for 3 days, especially if we've never had a history of it being enjoyable for 3 days. Like, it's probably not going to start now. So just enjoy, just like taking action from a place of, doing things that you want to do instead of acting out of guilt and fear and obligation. It's crazy. Yes, Katrina, I agree. Katrina says, those relationships with the narcissists were the best thing that ever happened to me spiritually. I am so grateful for all of the growth and truth that's been revealed to me. I promise, persevere, it gets better. Yes. And I feel the exact same way. And it takes a while, I think. And, and everybody goes through different stuff to different degrees for different lengths of time. And it's always kind of a hard climb up out of that deep, dark hole. But I would agree. I have been able to take what happened and to squeeze as much out of it as I possibly could, and have been able to move forward and use it to find myself and to connect with my understanding of God at a much deeper level. There's been a lot of really amazing positive things that have come from this. So, but it's a journey. It's a journey. It does not happen overnight, but it can happen. You know, I hadn't thought about that. Erica says, yes, if Dana doesn't have plans, I would love to do a Valentine's Day stream. That's a really great idea. Is it next week? I have no concept of time. Concept of time like a goldfish. Yes, it is next week. Then yes, I think we should totally, I was completely planning on it. Yes, we'll do a live stream next week. Same, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we'll go for the same amount of time. Yeah, it'll be fun. Let's see here. MZ Wemzyful says, I've been suspecting my landlady is a narcissist or at least toxic. She's been putting me down, making it clear she is more intelligent and desirable than me and all our friends. Does this sound like a narcissist to anyone? Well, at a minimum, it definitely sounds toxic. And yeah, it's one of those things like, you know, I think it can be really helpful to view stuff in terms of what is nourishing for you. Like that's a really great place to just start from. You know, what is nourishing for you? And if this person is toxic, then they're at the opposite end of the spectrum of nourishing, right? They're toxic, they're poisonous. So kind of once you identify this, you're like, man, and how, in thinking about how do you feel when you are around a toxic, poisonous person, you literally feel like you've been poisoned. You have low energy, you feel confused, you feel maybe kind of sick to your stomach. It's like when you get food poisoning, right? Like you eat a certain food, you're like, man, I know it was that marinara sauce. Like, you know exactly, it's that feeling of I know exactly what I got sick on. When you know what makes you sick, then most people tend to just stay away from it, right? And then you don't even want to be around that marinara sauce anytime soon. It's the same with people. Like once you kind of know, you know what, I do not like the way that I feel when I'm around that woman. I've got my guard up. I don't trust her, and I don't trust her for valid reasons. And she's not a safe person. I can't open up to her. She's competitive for ways and reasons don't even matter. She's it just pot stirring and triangulating and toxic. Like I just, that those are all, any one of those reasons is enough of a reason to just steer clear and really minimize contact. So, so 100 Smiles says, Dana, do you dislike or hate women named Susie? I did for a while after living with her, a woman named Susie who was she was scary. Like she was legit scary. I really feel bad for any guy that gets tangled up with her because she was stunningly beautiful and she was very petite, but she really would have been like abusive all the way around, including physical. Like she just was something else. But now, no, I think it's a cute name now. I mean, this was, 20 years ago. So, but isn't it funny how people can have that effect on you when you just associate something negative with them and you're like, oh, I just don't need, like that name's ruined. Like just stay away from me. Okay. Healing hopeful survivor. Oh, what an optimist. Says, I'm waiting for February 15th when the chocolates get discounted. That's funny. Yes. Bonnie says, yes, I feel so poisoned every single day being around the narcissist. It's so true. It really is. And that's so cool. So like when you can start tuning into that with how you feel emotionally, right? Drained, confused, disoriented is a big one. angry, resentful, uncertain. And then physically, how do you feel? Maybe your stomach is in a knot. You might feel nauseous. You clench your muscles. You get really anxious. All of that, none of that's normal. None of that is a normal way or a healthy way to feel around another person. It doesn't mean that the way that you feel is off. It means that odds are their behavior is off. But where we oftentimes go wrong is when we're trying to deny or justify or minimize feeling that way, thinking that it must be us, or worse, like being told that it's us. And if nobody else experiences this side of them, or they just don't see it, or they're, used to living in a den of dysfunction, to them it's normal, then it can make us feel crazy. Like, really? Nobody else sees this, like has a problem with this? And this is where it goes back to really knowing yourself well enough to where you're not needing that outside approval or validation, that you're like, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like, I don't care we don't need to sit here and debate the point as to whether or not they're toxic. I know how I feel, and I don't feel good around this person. So I'm steering clear of them. Period. End of story. Like, I don't need to justify it. I'm just going to take action, and I'm okay with it. Okay, let's see. Matt says, I've been abused my whole life, and sometimes I like the abuse, and other times I don't like it, and can't believe I ever did. I'm just really screwed up. What you're experiencing is a very normal response to a very abnormal situation. And it's very common for people, whatever they go through, once that becomes normal, whatever that might be, there's a certain degree of comfort in the expected. So if a person grows up in a home, let's say with an alcoholic parent who gets drunk every night and who maybe yells at them and is completely unpredictable, like they don't know if they're going to have to miss school the next day to take care of them, or to check on them throughout the night to make sure that they didn't wander into the street or get sick, and you know what I mean? If that's a child's life growing up, even though it's incredibly uncomfortable and they wish it was different, there's probably, even though they might not realize that there's a degree that this is comfortable, human beings were wired kind of for consistency. So whatever sets that program for us at a young age, that's at a certain level of what's comfortable, because we know the dance. So we know how to interact with an alcoholic, like if you grew up like that, right? So it's sort of like, okay, I know how to anticipate the environment. I know how to walk on eggshells. I know what to say, what not to say. I know this dance that we do. And so when that child gets older and they're having relationships with other people, they might feel really uncomfortable dating a person who's not an alcoholic. And more likely than not, this is all subconscious. So they might not realize that they're sabotaging healthier relationships with healthier people. And they might really be surprised that they're gravitating towards people that drink. Or they might be like, you know what, I thought this person didn't drink. And then I was really surprised later on down the line to find out that they were in fact an alcoholic. Just like I promised myself, or an addict, just like I promised myself I would never date or marry an addict or an alcoholic, and here I am. And why is that? And it's just at that more subconscious level, that dynamic is more comfortable because it's what they're used to. So the brain is a really funny, fascinating thing, the way that it really kind of sets up these different patterns for us. And it oftentimes takes a person decades before they realize that this is what's going on. I think it's something like estimates or something like 95% of our behavior is subconscious. And that's the big challenge, I think, as an adult, is making those subconscious thoughts, bringing them into our conscious awareness. And the added challenge of this, not only are we not aware of them, but there's also oftentimes reasons that we're not aware of them. So our brain is repressing a lot of stuff, we're denying a lot of stuff. And then, too, there's just that whole part of, we're just not aware of how our past impacts our present today. We might have thought that, hey, I thought I dealt with this, or what's wrong with me? Like, my dad died 20 years ago from alcoholism, and I'm still really angry at him. And what's wrong with me? So it's just amazing how these issues can tend to come up time and time again. And we think we've worked through them, we think we've resolved them, and yet here they are again. And when we find ourselves, excuse me, my nose, when we find ourselves in patterns of behavior, then it's because there's still messages from that we need to learn. So those emotions or those patterns of behavior have messages for us. And so that's another part of it, is so often we can get so frustrated and angry at ourselves, with the other people. And we're like, why am I running in this loop? Like, what is going on here? What's wrong with me? I'm really messed up. And the reality is, you're running in a loop. And so what you're experiencing here, there's more, it's like an iceberg. Like, you're seeing the tip of the iceberg, which is a good thing, because probably for years you didn't. But now there's a lot more to kind of dig out, It's interesting stuff. Yes. And MZ Wemzy Full says, if you had an abusive upbringing, it can feel boring when you meet a healthy person. There's no intensity or drama. It feels unnerving, like there is something wrong. We're unsure of our role without rescuing the other. Yes, absolutely. So there's a thing that's called the drama triangle. And it's, picture a triangle. So there's 3 points, and you have victim, persecutor, rescuer. And for anybody that's grown up in a dysfunctional home, those are really the 3 roles. Those are your choices. You're stuck in that drama triangle. The only way to break out of that drama triangle is through, assertive, open, honest, sincere communication with yourself and with other people, to the point that it's actually going to be productive, right? But seeing the situation clearly is a big part of it. So I think awareness that there's a problem is the first step for anything. And then realizing, oh my God, like, this is why my life's not working. It's like the Bermuda Triangle. Like, I've been stuck in the drama triangle. This is why. And I've been sliding around the board in these different roles. You have a father, my father was the persecutor, he was the abuser, and I was the victim. And then, but maybe my brother was being abused, and then he was the victim, and then I was the rescuer. And everybody's just kind of playing these different roles and going around this triangle in different ways, and breaking free from that. It's sort of like, okay, but then now what? So it's not enough to just break free from that triangle. It's learning a whole different skill set. So that's another thing when people talk about, can narcissists change, this kind of stuff. I think one of the biggest logical fallacies with that is thinking that if they would just stop the behavior, the lying, cheating, stealing, what have you, that they would somehow, it's like having a porcupine. Like, well, if they, just stopped their prickly behavior, that they would somehow be a kitten. And the reality is no, like, first off, that doesn't work, right? Like, you're talking like radical transformation. But then second, they need to unlearn or stop all of that problematic behavior, then replace it with a whole bunch of learned behavior. And that's a ton of work for a person to completely rebuild who they are. That's, so Yeah. So yes, paying attention to like what feels comfortable. And so back to what we were talking about earlier, like with the intensity is, I think so many of us get caught up in confusing intensity for sincerity and intensity for love and abuse for love. You know, they treat me like garbage, but then they make up for it in these really over the top grand ways, you know, a dozen roses sent to work, or all of these, you know, love bombing type texts telling me, you know, quoting song lyrics and sending me these romantic memes and making me feel so loved. Actually, I came across a meme the other day on Instagram that summed it up perfectly. It said something like, I'm somewhere caught in the middle of wanting to be loved like that again and terrified of being hurt like that again. And that sums up an abusive relationship perfectly. That's exactly why people get stuck. So at least a lot of people, most relationships tend to be that Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, where the good times are so good, but man, the bad times are so bad. And so a normal, healthy relationship can feel really flat compared to that. Bonnie says, and we are trying to rebuild who we are. Yes, absolutely. And it's a process. And I think one of the challenges that we have is with being compassionate to ourselves along the way, because it's just how you see things today is going to be very different from how you see things in 6 weeks or 6 months from now. And so it's just really wild. And then every time you see things with a little bit more clarity, it's its own level of crazy making of like, oh my God, how did I not see that before? You know, and then there's all of these feelings again of kind of this guilt and maybe not guilt, like remorse and frustration and crazy making as to like, why didn't I see this before? And oh my God, this is so much time lost because I didn't see this before. And then you're sad for your old self of like, oh, I cannot believe I went through all that for so long. You know, and they're just a mix of emotions as we grow. But hindsight's always 2020. And the cool thing is like, once that light comes on, like once you have that aha moment, and you're probably going to they start becoming exponential over time. You know, they just happen quicker and quicker because you're on the right path. Like you're not wandering through the desert anymore, trying to figure out what the hell happened. And is it them or is it you? And could they change and could things be worked out? And like, you're not lost in the fog, like you're on a path and you're moving in the right direction. And so now the further you get down the path, like things just start speeding up. So it becomes really cool. But yeah, learning to realize like retooling, much of our personality, it just takes time and it takes practice. Abuse Free says, hi, Dana, can you please give some pointers on a covert narcissistic parent and how they behave, or any YouTube link for that? I'm struggling with my mother and suspect she might be a covert narc. There is a group. Let me check to see if they're still going. I feel like I heard recently that they might not be. So let me just check real quick. While I'm looking it up, at a minimum, you can check. Hold on, I can't think and type. There's a few. Okay, there's 3 groups that pop up immediately on Facebook for daughters of narcissistic mothers. And I would suggest there's groups on Facebook, there's groups that are just on the internet in general. That's like, you'll have a ton of aha moments in there because you're going to get a wide variety of stories from people that have dealt with a wide variety and, in degree of narcissistic mothers. So the only thing to keep in mind is if your mom is on Facebook and she can see what groups you join, even though it might be a closed group, she can still see you're in it, even though she can't see what you're posting. But just something to keep in mind. Covert narcissism with parents, it's very much kind of the same thing. So it's oftentimes using charm and lying, triangulating, gaslighting, pitting siblings against each other. It's all about the narcissist all of the time. It's just the way that they go about things. Pathological lying, I would say, is probably the number one thing. Feeling like you just don't feel safe around them. Kind of questioning, like, why do I not really feel bonded to my mother? What's off here? And then, the degree of like manipulation and oftentimes maliciousness. But because it's not in such an overt way, it can be incredibly confusing. Like, well, maybe my mom, she never yelled at me, she never hit me, but there's this kind of undercurrent of, I just don't trust her. So, but like I said, I think if you get in a group that's a bunch of other people that are going through it, you'll have the clarity that you're looking for in no time. Adriana is talking about affirmations and says, I guess I do affirmations at night and I try to be on top of my self-talk, but it takes lots of time. And if I don't do it, I regress. Yeah, totally. That's one of those things too. It often, and I think change in general, it tends to be 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back. It's a messy, complicated thing. Change is transformative, and transformation is very rarely a clean, tidy process. And realizing that and supporting yourself as you go through it. Because I totally get it. It's so flippin' frustrating when you're trying to change whatever it is that you're trying to change, and you're like, I swore to myself that I wasn't going to do this again, or that I thought I had this figured out, and you just kind of keep going around that mountain over and over again. But sometimes it helps for habit change. So for like affirmations, self-talk, a big part of it is just bringing your awareness to it. So paying attention to how you're talking to yourself throughout the day, especially, and maybe if that's not, like if you're not really aware of what you're saying to yourself, paying attention to how you feel, especially when you're feeling depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, stupid, fat, or ugly, to ask yourself, okay, well, what sparked that? Because odds are it was probably either it was somebody else was saying something and, that impacted us, or it was that negative self-talk. So sometimes I think it's easier to pay attention to how you feel and then to start tracing it back to like what caused, where did this chain reaction start? And then really working on those affirmations. Okay, so also setting up like triggers for like positive triggers for behavior. So for example, tying a new behavior into an existing behavior. So let's say, for example, if your morning routine is you get up and you go make coffee and then you make breakfast, or maybe then you make coffee, then you shower, then you make breakfast. To tie your affirmations into making coffee, or to tie your affirmations into showering. So it's something that you do every day. So that way you're not having to remember a totally different hobby. Like you're using, like your brain is going to get used to, okay, when the coffee maker goes on, or the tea kettle, depending on where you live, then that's when I'm going to spend some time doing affirmations. Or whenever I shower, the shower goes on, then I'm going to do this thing. It really does make, developing a new hobby significantly easier. Erica says, I love that I now have a regular self-care routine. I used to think that self-care was a luxury, not a necessity. I feel so much better now. Good for you. Yeah, that's a huge important shift. And it's amazing, I think, how so many of us have thought that self-care was a luxury. Even stuff as far as like medical, dental, basic needs were considered a luxury. And self-care too, a big part of self-care is really paying attention to your environment too. So, getting a massage, getting a haircut, going to the dentist on a regular basis, those things are all self-care. But another part of that is also really paying attention to our emotions and, cutting out toxic relationships, quitting jobs that are intimidating or stressful or just not fulfilling, and taking care of ourselves on every single level as much as we possibly can every single day. And that's one of those things, like once our awareness grows, I very vividly remember a day, probably 7 years ago, where I remember thinking like self-care was about like getting a massage, like that would have been self-care. And then as my thinking expanded, it was just the realization of, getting haircuts on a regular basis and going to the doctor if I really needed to go to the doctor. I can't tell the stuff that I put myself through it seriously breaks my heart. I remember I had a job when I was in my early 20s. It was awful. And when my friend and I took this job because we felt guilty because her grandmother owned this cleaning company and she was a real witch anyhow, and we shouldn't have felt bad for her. But we took this cleaning job at this printing company, and it was scary and disgusting, and it was the grossest. I don't know how the owner of that company didn't fire everybody in there. They were such pigs. And it was just, awful, like beyond awful. We were cleaning the men's bathrooms and they would blow their nose on the wall. And it was disgusting. And I remember going there to help clean, and I had a kidney infection and I could barely walk. And I just thought, well, but I said I was going to be there tonight to help clean. Everything came before me. I was always last. And I always thought, oh, I didn't even think that I had a strong work ethic. I think it was just more of a, like, this is my job. Like, you show up to your job, and you just suffer through. I don't know. It was ridiculous. The stuff that oh God. Yeah. So the point is, I think that most people, as you start going down this path, you're going to start realizing that your concepts for things do start to expand. Like, what does it mean to actually take care of yourself? And especially with self-care, I think it's one of those things too, where you can start looking around at other people. And that's when you start kind of feeling like something's off. Like, man, I tell you, some of these other people, they really do like kind of take better care of themselves. And they have a totally different set of expectations for their place in the world and what they think is appropriate. And I remember going to my cousin's house every time I ever went there. And, they always had like designer clothes and like cute clothes, and just, they were always real fashionable, and I never was. And it was always just this huge wake-up call of like, what, I don't know, just like, it was weird. Like, what happened to me? Like, how did I get to this place where, I'm buying all my clothes from like secondhand stores and just not putting in the effort into my appearance, and feeling like really frumpy and feeling almost invisible, but not, I don't know. It just was weird. It's just weird. It's weird when you have those moments of, we're so different, and why is that? And then just seeing how their expectations, like, I was so used to settling for crumbs, and they were so used to they had expectations, like healthy, normal, reasonable expectations for things. And to me, that was just so far beyond what I could even think was possible that it was just weird. I felt like an alien or like a scientist being around them, because I would just sit there and just observe of like, man, how I wish I felt like that. Like this would just be so obvious of, like they would have never gone to work had they had a kidney infection. They would have never worked at a printing company like that. So certain things that I found myself in, it would have just been a very obvious, absolutely no kind of a thing for, it's just weird stuff to think about. If you find it in your own home or within your own family or with yourself, kind of these differences. Gamer Christina says, Dana, please help. How do I handle being in a room full of coworkers who don't hear you when you speak out loud? I can say hi to 4 people and not one of them will look up. Well, it sounds like okay, a couple of things. You could are they thinking that your hi is just more small talk, like just an acknowledgement? Or because I have been in work environments like that. Like we had a morning meeting twice a week, and people would come in and they would say exactly your situation. Hi, hey, and people would just kind of grunt or grumble and not even engage or acknowledge them. If that's not the case and they're like actively ignoring you, then, and you want to work towards changing that, and especially if they're normal to you the rest of the day, you could always go over to them as you walk by and like put your hand on their shoulder and call them by their name. Well, hi, Sharon, how was your weekend? Or, oh, well, James, how are you doing this morning? That kind of thing. If you're addressing a person directly, they might be more inclined to respond. So that's just a thought. Or maybe not even touching their shoulder if you're not comfortable, but you could just call them by their name. Like, hey, good morning, Jill. Good morning, Sharon, Bob, Sam. How was you guys' weekend? And if it's still kind of a bunch of grunts and grumbles, and if they're just kind of sour grapes the rest of the time too, then I think I would just save your energy and just, not take it personally. It's them, not you. Yep. Aura says, Dana, I totally understand. I was selfish on the regular. I was told I was selfish on the regular when I was a kid by my mom. So I think it gets to be a normal thought process to think that certain things are just not for me. Yep. That was totally it for me too. And yeah, it's sad. Like when you start kind of, I don't know, when you just realize that disconnect. It's taken me, it's still something I struggle with. But like really repatterning that. And I don't even think that my parents, that came from like a malicious place. I think that came from a very fear-based poverty place. Actually, both my parents grew up really, really poor. And even though we had money when I was a kid, they definitely, well, their recollection might be different than mine, but I feel like actually there probably isn't, because my mom acknowledged it not too long ago about she was overly frugal with stuff, especially with my parents' divorce and especially with me because I lived with her. But yeah, stuff that it really kind of set the tone of, it was just more of the implication, I think, of don't ask for anything because you're not going to get it. And I remember I had a friend, friend in junior high, and she had, I just loved her dad. He was such a great guy and he was so involved with us. And just, her family did a lot of things that mine didn't. And I remember like Christmas time at their house and just being like, wow, that's so nice. Like that must be so nice to, you know, like just actually get like real presents, you know? And yeah, so it's I don't know, it's just amazing how stuff like that sets the tone. Valenta says, do you think parenthood changes a narcissist? Well, it changes them, I think, in the sense that they tend to become more of what they already are, just like with anybody. You know, like money doesn't change people. It makes them more of what they already are. I think parenthood is oftentimes very much the same way. So, you know, a narcissist, if a person has that predisposition to being incredibly selfish, if they are all about them all of the time, then they're going to carry that. That's their personality. And they're, you know, it's like the saying goes, like wherever you go, there you are. So they're going to be bringing that to every single interaction across the board. It might be more pronounced in certain areas. Like it might be worse, it generally is worse at home because they know, you know, they're not going to get fired there. They're not going to, they've been able to relax and be themselves, kind of a thing. So, you know, oh, I don't know. Something's going on in the chat now. Okay. Adriana says, I used to be into taking care of my appearance until after my divorce. I don't make the time anymore, but I can't seem to find time to dress up. Not because I'm sad, I just would rather sleep in or be productive. I would caution that because oftentimes depression doesn't come across, it can come across as sadness for sure, but it can also come across as numbness, and it can come across as like a loss of interest in doing things that you once cared about. And self-care is often one of a big sign that a person's feeling depressed. And so I totally understand like the wanting to sleep in sleeping excessively is another sign of depression too. But sleeping in or being productive, being overly busy is often a sign of kind of wanting to escape. So everything that you're saying, even though it might not feel off, the fact that there was such this marked change in your behavior due to like a major life event like a divorce kind of paints the picture for me that there's something more going on there. So, and it's very common too for people after they go through an abusive relationship of any kind, they want to isolate and they're afraid of getting hurt again. And so it's very common for people to gain weight, to start wearing really baggy clothes, to maybe not wear makeup, to not want to draw attention to themselves, to want to isolate, not want to be around friends, family, not want to date. And they might not realize that this is a problem. We might justify it in other ways. And, you know, but I would just as an experiment, I would encourage you to take some time at some point and like before the next live stream, take some time and put in the effort that you used to put into before your divorce, whatever your routine was for getting dressed, to wear some of those same clothes and see how you feel. Even if you don't leave the house, even if you end up going back to bed 20 minutes later, just see how you feel. I would be curious to know if you start feeling, well, Well, I'd be curious on how you feel in general, but to pay attention to feelings like, are you feeling vulnerable? Are you feeling, or do you feel confident? Do you feel uncertain? Do you feel like you would be drawing unwanted attention to yourself? Do you, how are you feeling with that? I think that you might gain a lot of insight into what's really going on, if there's stuff at a deeper level going on there. So just something to consider. Valenta asks, how does a narcissist treat their newborn? Here's the thing, like with narcissists, these people, they don't love and they don't attach. And it's all about them all of the time. Their selfishness and their entitlement knows no bounds. And so however they have been towards you, there's a very solid chance that that's how they will be towards their child, especially as that child gets older and starts developing a sense of personal identity. So at first, well, it just depends. Like if a narcissist has been, they're all so different, you know, but like, it's very common for them to really to get worse towards the mother after their wife or girlfriend has given birth, because it's sort of like now they're settling in to the relationship. They know she's not going to leave, so I can really treat her like garbage. That's very common for them to start pulling a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Or they might not want to have anything to do with the baby. They might, and sometimes that can come across as just jaw dropping. Like, it's like they might feel like they might come across like they're in competition with a baby, and which can seem really weird. Like, what do you do? Like, this is your son. What is your problem? Like, why are you upset that I have to breastfeed the baby? You know, like, you weirdo. Like, it's, you know, just bizarre, really immature, childish, inappropriate emotions for an adult to have towards the mother of their child and towards their child. They might act almost like an older, like, you know, when you have a baby and then there's like a 2 or 3 year old, how that 2 or 3 year old reacts. Like, sometimes they like the baby, but then sometimes they're resentful and irritated that it's crying, or don't understand why it needs to be fed, or don't understand that it's a big deal to like take it to the doctor. Like, why do we have to go? And why doesn't he shut up? And blah, and they don't get it. Oftentimes that's what a narcissist can be like. And just sort of feeling like, I feel like there's like this weird sibling rivalry here, but this is the parent. Or they might treat the baby like a prop and use it. And they might be really good in public and so loving and so gushy and so over the top and really come across as like world's greatest parent out in public. But often really what that is, it's just to get that validation and attention from other people. So other people will say how great of a parent they are. So there's that. And but yes, once the child starts getting older, it tends to be more of that and showing a sense of identity. It's like anybody else in the narcissist's life. Like, they have these very defined boxes of how other people should be and how they should think and feel and act and what their wants and needs should be. And if that person starts showing any individuality outside of what they think that we all should be, that's when they start freaking out. They try to keep grinding down those edges to have that person in the box. And so once that child starts getting older, and, you know, maybe the narcissist played football and they want their son to play football, and the child wants to play with Legos instead, or loves video games, or is just different, then they might become very like cold and withdrawing of their attention, their time, their attention, their affection. If the child is more like them, then they might kind of turn this child into like a golden child, where they idolize this child, but it's like they're living vicariously through that child. So they're still not seeing the child for who they are. It's sort of like, oh, this is my second chance at getting to live a life. So yeah, you know, they were a football star. They're going to expect their child to be a football star. And then not only that, they're also going to want their child to kind of live out any unfulfilled dreams that they might have had. But then here's the kicker. So if their child does that, and if their child is better than them and actually does get a football scholarship or does whatever, right? Like does achieve their unlived dreams, then they can become very resentful and bitter and carping and horrible. So, but a narcissist is not, I mean, having a child is not going to turn them into a loving, doting, caring person. A porcupine's not going to turn into a kitten. So it's really important for people to see clearly what you're dealing with and to not hold on to hope that they're going to be, especially when you're dealing with a small child, that they're, you know, if they've always been irresponsible, there's no reason to think they're going to start being responsible now. If they've, you know, been physically abusive before, there's no reason to think that they're not going to be physically abusive in the future. Like who they are today is most likely who they're going to be tomorrow. Like and that goes for anybody. You know, behavior change is really, really difficult, but even when we want to change, right? So if you're talking about a person who has no insight into what they're doing is wrong and they feel justified and entitled and they blame everybody else, that's when you're dealing with a really dangerous person, because they have no accountability for their behavior and they have no acknowledgement that what they're doing is wrong. No matter what, they could go to jail, they could be told by other people, they could be, you know, and it still doesn't sink into them. And then they start feeling like the world is out to get them instead of just owning the truth, which is no, their behavior is the problem. That's just part of their personality disorders, just complete inability to see. They're like lost in a paper bag of their own life, you know? Yeah, Daniel says, yeah, people just don't change. It's really, really difficult. That's one of the things that is so difficult with people kind of talking about kind of healing from codependency, and they get very overwhelmed with this realization of, no, this is going to take a while. Like settle in, get comfortable, because, you know, like Sweetbriar was saying, like once you're on that path for growth, like you can't help but grow. But it's just this ongoing process where, and I think it's an upward spiral. So like the clearer you see things, the more action you take, the clearer you see things, the more action you take. And it just, you're on a more positive trajectory there. But, you know, it's quite the process. The downside of this, if we're not seeing a narcissist behavior or an abusive person in general, their behavior clearly, because it's just difficult. It's just really damn difficult for a normal, decent person to fully understand the depths of like how awful and selfish and ridiculous and rotten another human being can be. You know, just when you think you found the bounds of like, well, surely they would be considerate about this, or surely they would love their child, or surely they would. And it's like, oh, there's nothing there. I mean, it's just a black hole of, they're just an energy vortex, you know? And it's just jaw dropping when you really start to see just in how many different ways they're just a shell of a person. Like there's nothing there. Like they just don't care. And that's another thing. Boca, good comment, says, yeah, they hate it when it's Christmas and the kids get presents. Yeah, it's stuff like that. Like there's, instead of putting aside their own stuff, it's just everything is this competition, you know? So kind of like how I had said, you know, watching my friend's family when I was in junior high and high school and how they had like a fairly normal Christmas. And But the difference is, like, I didn't try to ruin their Christmas, right? It was just more of from a place of probably jealousy and sadness of like, boy, that's just nice. Whereas with a narcissist, and it's so common for them, like holidays, birthdays, they just have got to, ruin it for everybody else, because it's either they didn't get it, or maybe they did get it, but they want the attention on them. It's just all about them all the freaking time. And it's just ridiculous. Oh, totally. Long hanging captain said, do narcissists consciously enjoy not giving you closure? I think so. Especially if they've shown that they're sadistic in other ways. Because to them, it's a game. It's all a game. It's all a game. It's all a game. It's only ever another level to the game. There's nothing there. There was it's like pulling a string on a sweater. Like, you keep pulling and pulling and pulling, and all you're going to end up with is just a big ball of yarn, right? Like, you're just going to pull until there's nothing left. Like, that's what it is with a narcissist. Like, it's manipulation. It's like pulling scarves out of a hat. Like, it's manipulation, 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 manipulation. The scarves keep coming until the day that they die. Like, there is no end. There is no authentic self there. You're not dealing with a person in the way that we understand a person to be. Like, there's nothing there. Just a bunch of scarves and a hat. And it's just all manipulation. And so, yeah, the absence of closure. Yes, D says the absence of closure is supply. Yes. And so it oftentimes keeps the target locked in the game. We want closure. What did we do? What did we do wrong? What did we do to deserve this? Why? Why me? Why now? Why us? Why? I just need to know. And it's the only answer ever is that it's all just part of the game. It makes them feel smug and superior. It gives them supply. It feeds they think some sort of fills their bucket. But the problem with their emotional needs bucket is there's holes in it. And so it's just this exercise in futility. You can give and give and give, and you're never going to fill that bucket. The bucket's broken. Long hanging captains, thank you for the live stream donation. Kevin, hey Kevin. Kevin says, yeah, I've been going to counseling for 2 years now and haven't even gotten to the deeper stuff from childhood, but I do think it's imperative for me to do so. So if I want to heal. Yeah, Pia Melody is fantastic, and she's got a ton of videos. Here's another, so check her out on YouTube. Here is another thing on that, like understanding childhood wounds and stuff is, so when I got that comment from Sweetbriar about the childhood wounds and understanding, ourselves that way, which was so insightful. And Kevin, if you weren't here for that, I will link down to this comment below. That was absolutely like a huge game changer. And I think you'd really enjoy hearing it. But anyways, the comment, if you want to just go look it up tonight, it's on the Codependency for Dummies book club part 2 video. And the person, her name is Sweetbriar McCollum is the screen name. So go check out her comments. They're just like amazingly insightful. But what I have found is this information, I guess like any other information out there, the more we circle around it and have different understandings, the more we understand things differently. And it is amazing. And I think I've probably watched every single video from Pia Melody. And this was several years ago. So it's just weird. It's so weird how, I guess it's sort of like taking a drink out of a fire hose. Like you're only going to get so much. And so your point of understanding now even is going to be very different from your point of understanding 6 months from now, or even 6 weeks from now. So I think it can be really good to start like revisiting this information periodically to see kind of what else we're getting out of it. Sable says, cash you outside because you touch my inside. Love your blue butterfly. Everyone tries some art. That's hilarious. Thank you so much. And thank you for the live stream donation. I appreciate it. Yes, art is awesome. Great way to express yourselves. Truth Seeker says, yeah, I wonder if not being nurtured does form NPD in some cases. Yeah. Well, you know, the kind of the prevailing thought is that it tends to form as either out of expectation, the child is spoiled rotten, and it is like Joffrey, Game of Thrones. They just become a Joffrey. Or so it's kind of nature and nurture, right? So if a child kind of already has this personality, like predisposition within them, if they're spoiled, it's really going to bring it out. And then they become entitled and demanding and arrogant and ridiculous and like a brat prince, right? Which is what he was. Or if they're incredibly neglected for whatever reason, then it's more of this defense mechanism where it becomes all about them because it was never about them. And they become, you know, very selfish, very entitled. It's just these walls they build up, and they don't allow themselves. This is part of why they don't attach deeply, is for the more kind of like traditional narcissists that tends to not come from, well, I think the ones that were spoiled never really formed healthy, deep emotional bonds to begin with because love was shown through stuff. And so they missed a lot of like kind of normal development, right? But the ones that were neglected or abandoned or what have you, it tends to be they shut down these feelings of vulnerability. And for bonding to occur, vulnerability needs to occur, right? It's scary to open yourself up to making a new friend or going on a date or falling in love, especially. And so they just, and then this is a subconscious level, right? Like that switch just gets flipped and they're like, nope, never getting hurt like that again. And so there's just these really shallow emotions. There's just not a lot of depth there. And then instead of that emotional depth, it's replaced by just a bunch of games. Because that's all they have. Like there is no sincere interaction with others. It's all about what can they get out of the situation? How can they, it's a win. They continually set up like win-lose situations. So actually, let's talk about that for a second, because I think that's a good way to understand this stuff. With narcissists, it's very much like that win-lose. Like that's what they set up. They're in competition with the baby, with their coworkers, with their spouse, to a point where it's ridiculous, right? Like a certain level of competition is healthy and normal, depending on the situation. Like if you're playing sports, like that's healthy and normal. If you're at work and you're in sales, healthy and normal. With your spouse, with your infant child, bizarre and not normal, right? Like bizarre and just inappropriate. But with narcissists, it's always that win-lose mentality. For people on the opposite side of the spectrum that are more on that codependent side of the equation, it's lose-win. It's I will sink myself to save you. It's all about you. You win. I'm happy if you win. But really, I'm not. I'm lying to myself, telling myself that. But I don't know how to have a win-win because that feels off. I feel like I'm only the situation's comfortable if I'm needed. So it tends to be lose-win. Healthy people tends to be win-win. You know, hey man, like there's enough of physical stuff, there's enough emotional stuff to go around. Like you can get your needs met and I can get mine met. Like there's no competition. There's that attitude of cooperation instead. That's the difference. So, and one of the things that can make all of this stuff so difficult for anybody to see, whether you're a person's a narcissist or whether they're codependent or somewhere in between, is, you know, you probably heard me say this before, but the last thing the fish notices is the water. So if this has been your environment, this is the way that you're interacting with the world and with yourself and your place in it and all of these things, you're not realizing it's just normal for you. Anything else feels off somehow. And it just takes a while to get things into more of an alignment. And speaking of which, so we're going to gear up here so we don't go for too long like we normally do. I'll turn my timer off. Real quick, as I went to check my phone, and I'm trying to learn Spanish, and so I subscribe to this Duolingo app, and like it's freaking me out because they keep texting me, like they keep texting me things in Spanish, and I've spent so much time in there, like with my Spanish lessons. I'm like, why are you still They're making it seem like I have work to do that I haven't done. I don't know. It's like they're stalking me. I don't know what's going on with this app. Okay, so what was I saying? The book club for the end of this month. If you guys are interested, it's a good book. It's Who's Pulling Your Strings by Harriet Breaker, I believe is her name. And I just finished reading it the other day and I'm working on my notes for it. I still need to get the Codependency for Dummies notes up. I realize this. That is a massive undertaking to have to pare all that stuff down. But the manipulation, the Who's Pulling Your Strings notes will be up. What is today? Wednesday? They'll be up by Friday for sure. So. Oh, good. Erica says, I really appreciate how much time you spend on this live stream, Dana. Every minute really helps me. Well, you are so very welcome. And I'm just really glad. I'm really glad that people can get something out of this. Harmony says, oh my God, I have that app too. Does Duolingo like text you? It's like this. They've seriously sent me like 3 text messages today for no reason. Thank you. Hey, Doug. Says, Dana, thank you for the live stream. You are such a healing soul. Light and love to all. Namaste. Well, I appreciate that. You are too, Doug. I hope you know that. So it's always good to have you. It's always good to see you pop up. So, okay, let's see. That's why this chat is all over the place. It's kind of funny. Bonnie says real quick, I never felt an attitude of cooperation from my narcissistic spouse. Yeah, and that's very common because it's always a one-sided thing. You know, it's just all about them all the time. I think you can replace the word narcissist with basically selfish. And so whenever you're asking yourself, well, why does so-and-so do that? Just replace them with selfish. Like, well, why is, and then you'll realize the kind of what we're asking, because it's basically saying, well, basically, why is this selfish person acting so selfish? Right? Then you're like, oh, because the porcupine is acting like a porcupine. You know, why is this selfish person cheating on me yet again? Why is this selfish person continuing to lie to me? Why is this selfish person considering to use, abuse, exploit, or neglect our children. Like that selfish person is only ever about them. It's how they're wired. You know, they're selfish because they're selfish. It's just, and it's like, you know, it just takes a long time for a normal, decent person to really wrap their brain around that. Because it's so different from how we are and how we think. So. Okay. Waleed says, good night, Dana. I love your understanding of things. Thank you for that. It clears things up for me. Good deal. Well, I'm glad. I hope that helps. Okay. Gosh, this chat is so full of so many good things. Yes, Boca absolutely says, yes, it's like the story of the scorpion and the frog. Yes, and so if you're not familiar with that story, so a frog is trying to cross the pond, and a scorpion comes over and says, "Oh, frog, please help, you know, I need help. I need you to carry me to the other side." And the frog says, "But scorpion, you are a scorpion and you will sting me." And the scorpion says, "Oh, no, frog, I promise. Why would I do that? You would be helping me out. You know, I promise I won't sting you." And so the frog says, "Well, okay, I'll help you out." And then swims the scorpion across to the other side of the pond. And the scorpion hops off and then stings the frog. And as the frog is dying, the frog says, why would you sting me? Why would you do that? And the scorpion looks down at him and says, "It's because I'm a scorpion. It's what I do." And that's such a good reminder of, it's really important, you know, when somebody shows us their true colors, to believe them and to not want to hold on to hope that they're going to be anything other than what they are. And that's not easy, and that oftentimes does take a really long time. Oh, do they? New Chris says, "Dana, you've sanitized it. They both die halfway across." Well, that's even, I haven't heard that version. That's even more interesting and appropriate, because that's exactly what they do. They will shoot themselves in the foot like that. And really, like, that's actually, I like that version better, because that is so accurate. You know, they destroy their family, they destroy their lives, they destroy everything around them. And, you know, they're hurting themselves too, and they don't even get it. Yeah, Kevin says, "Thanks a lot for referring me to that comment. I've always struggled with the concept of inner child, but this helps. Very well written. I might print it out and bring it to counseling." I would. To me, that was, she just nailed it. I took pictures of that comment because I was like, man, you know, I feel like I had been kind of touching on some of those concepts, but I had not connected them in the way that she had. And that was, you remember that game? What is it? I used to love that game. Minesweeper. Do you remember that? Does anybody remember that game? That's like super old, like super old. And most computers, man, this was like 15, 20 years ago. Like, you had the option of solitaire or like Minesweeper. But it was, for me, her comments are one of those what I call Minesweeper moments, where like you're just kind of stumbling around, like you click on an area and then it clears this whole area on there. And you're just like, man, boom, like that. Just one little thing went a long way. That was a great game. Salon says, "I liked Minesweeper." I know, right? it took me a long time to actually learn how to play that game, because before I guess that's a lot like life too, right? Like you're just kind of clicking around and you're like, okay, I hit a bomb. Like I don't know why or how. You just keep, I don't know. But yeah, once you realize actually how to play the game and then it's all math, then it's fun. But there's actually strategy there. James says, yes, Minesweeper. I was terrible at it. Yeah, you really have to focus on that game. Carmelita asks, what was the comment? It's really long, but I will link to it once this video is posted, probably tomorrow. I'll link to it. If you want to go find it, it's on the video, the Codependency for Dummies Part 2. And the gal's name is Sweetbriar McCollum. That is fun to say. So, and she has a blog too, which is also fantastic. Her blog is sweetbriars.blogspot.com. So she actually left 2 comments. I believe it was on that same video, and they were both just absolutely fantastic and insightful. Just loved it. Okay. So with that, let's take a moment to just get grounded and decompress and just be, oh man, that felt good, and be in the moment. And then we'll call it a night, and then I will see you guys next week. So find a comfortable position wherever you are. If you're in bed, feel free to just relax. And if you're sitting down, allow yourself to just sink into the chair, letting your body grow heavier and heavier with each passing breath. Focus on breathing in healing, protective, cleansing energy, and exhaling all of the anxiety, the fear, pain, stress. Maybe visualizing those exhales as a fog or a smoke. So breathing in deeply, as deep as you can, that cleansing, healing, protective light. Feeling as it travels effortlessly through your lungs, through the rest of your body. And as you exhale, pushing out all of the stress, anxiety, pain. Blowing that dark, smoggy, fog-looking color as far away from you as possible. Relaxing and allowing yourself to be fully in this moment. Knowing that it's okay to relax. That right now you are safe, that you are here, and that it's okay to just be. Being fully in this present moment. Feeling the temperature of the room or the space that you're in. Feeling the sensation of any fabrics against your skin. Tuning inward, paying attention as you notice your heartbeat. Being fully present in this moment. You are grounded. You are here. The past is the past. The future is unfolding in wonderful ways in each and every day. And that good things can happen to you and through you every single day. And those good things that are happening for you, they happen in both big ways and small ways. Now bringing your attention to the top of your head and scanning your body as you bring your attention down. Noticing any areas that you might be holding stress or tension and allowing them to relax. Relaxing your eyes, relaxing your cheeks and your jaw, letting your jaw fall open, letting your tongue fall from the roof of your mouth, relaxing your neck and your shoulders, feeling the weight of your shoulders as they drop down, relaxing your chest and your back, allowing those muscles to unwind, unclench, and relax. You are safe. You are here. Bringing your attention down into your arms. Again, still letting your shoulders drop down, letting your arms get heavy with the weight of just that relaxation. Bringing your attention down into your stomach, into your hips, your lower back. Releasing those muscles and allowing your legs to fall in whatever position is most comfortable for you. Relaxing your thighs, your knees, your calves, and your feet. Allowing your feet to fall in whatever position is most comfortable. And now let's take 7 deep breaths. Healing, cleansing, protective breaths in. And then exhaling any stress or anxiety. Allowing those healing, cleansing breaths, that white light that goes along with it, to fill up your entire body. Allowing it to expand and move effortlessly throughout your body, surrounding each and every cell that breath touches. Noticing how with each exhale, that dark smog color is becoming less and less as your body fills up with positive, healing, protective, cleansing, beautiful energy, pushing out all of the negative, the toxic, the stressful. And once you've gotten to the place where you are effortlessly breathing in that healing, white, cleansing energy, and that's pushed all of that toxic energy out of you. So you're breathing in that cleansing energy and you're exhaling that cleansing energy, and it's all clean, coming and going. Feeling how good that feels to have your complete body filled with that healing, cleansing energy. And now let's take a moment to send some of that cleansing, healing energy to some other people, maybe in the chat or in your life, that you feel could really benefit from it. Sending them an energetic hug, letting them know there is still so much good and right with the world, and that you care about them and that they matter. When you're ready, come on back to yourself, making sure to give yourself a really big, energetic hug, letting you know that you matter and that you are worthy and that you are enough. And there is so much that is right with you and right about you. And there is so much good within you and within the world. There really, really is. And when you're ready, Go ahead and open your eyes. Thank you guys so much for joining me and for being here and for helping to support each other. And I hope to see you next week. And you're welcome, Doug. I'm glad that you enjoyed that. Yeah, Truth Seeker says it's good to pray on a global scale. All need love. Very, very true. Very true. So with that said, you guys have a fantastic night and have a fantastic rest of your week. And I will see you next week. So as always, you are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. Lots of love. Bye.